Hello, Thought Roomies, and welcome back to the show. Today on the podcast, we have heavyweight MMA fighter and humanitarian extraordinaire, Justin Wren. He's well known for being on Spike TV's show, The Ultimate Fighter. He's written a book. He's founded an incredible charity called Fight for the Forgotten, whose mission is to defeat hate with love, and advocates for the bullied youth in America, as well as putting on so many incredible, ambitious international initiatives, like providing nearly 3,000 acres of land and dozens of water wells to the Pygmies of the Congo, among so many other things, which we will get into as we dive into this podcast. But to give you a sense of the kind of man that Justin is, he is such an incredible storyteller. He has actually been on Joe Rogan's podcast 8 times. Joe Rogan just called him, in one of his recent podcasts, the nicest and most charitable human being Joe's ever met in his life. He said that until he spent time with Justin, he didn't really know that someone could be so selfless, kind, and gentle. And I personally can relate and validate that statement because Justin and I got to spend about a week together traveling around in Arizona. And while we were just going around, people would stop and recognize Justin on the street. And he would stop whatever he was doing and really attune with people. He would listen to them. He would talk to them. He'd ask them genuine questions of interest. And sometimes he'd spend 15 minutes with someone he just met on the street. These are the kind of people and the kind of voices of truth, of authenticity, of practicing what they preach that I want to raise up on this podcast. So this turns out to be, without a doubt, the longest episode of the Thought Room to date. But I want to say that even if it takes you a few sittings to listen through this podcast, I want to encourage you to finish it because it will change something about your consciousness. These stories are raw, harrowing, chilling. And even though he's done a ton of public appearances, some of these stories Justin has never publicly told before anywhere else. You'll get to hear the short story about the wild synchronistic connection that Justin and I had over Instagram and how we ended up getting to know each other and diving deep and vacationing around in Sedona 1 week later. And one thing that Justin and I have in common is that in our own personal growth journeys, we both reached a point of deep isolation and rock bottom and seeking community. And I want to give a little nod to Aubrey Marcus and the Fit for Service community for personally changing my life in a really big way. And I know Justin has now just joined that community as well. And maybe some of you are listening to this and relate to that feeling of isolation and seeking community and kind of looking around going, where are the people like me? And in fact, that's maybe why you like this podcast. I had a listener tell me last week that she said, when I'm listening to your podcast, I feel like I'm hanging out with friends. And that compliment to me, it just made my heart sing. And if you're someone who feels like you've been doing the work, but you feel alone in it, I feel you, my friend. And I personally spent years searching, crying out for a teacher, a mentor, a guru, or even just a friend. And I want to say that stuff on the spiritual path doesn't really get easier. Life doesn't really get easier. It just changes. The challenges look different. And the bonus is that you learn how to move through the layers a little bit faster. But community support is absolutely crucial for moving you to the next level. You've probably heard that saying, you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I know how much having a community has changed my spiritual journey. It changed everything. It's a place where I found I could be myself. I had support in my business, encouragement. Suddenly, people were using all the same terminology and the same language as me and reading the same books. And so, this is what inspired me to create my own small community. And that project is The Conscious Man. You might have heard me talk about this on an intro before on the podcast, and I've just started posting about it on Instagram. But I am seeking 15 men to become a part of this very special community that I'm creating. Think about having 15 other people on your level, talking about the same things as you, dealing with the same challenges at work and at home, and trying to face the world in the same conscious way that you are. A place where you can finally truly be yourself and create lifelong bonds of brotherhood. A lot of times, the thing that stops us from making these big changes in our lives is resistance. And the mind can come up with a million excuses of why we shouldn't do the thing that we know we want to do. The mind might say, I just got too much going on right now, or maybe I'll do that when I save a bit more money. Things are too tight right now, or I'm overwhelmed with my responsibilities. If you fall into the things are financially tight right now camp, I'm offering 3 payment plans for this program that we can talk about. And I really want to make this accessible for all those who are really wanting to invest in choosing a more empowered future for themselves. If an investment like this scares you, good. I don't want this to be an easy decision because every single man who joins this program is going to have a different life at the end of it. Things will be different in his purpose, in his relationships. His family will notice the difference. He will grow substantially and gain friendships that will last a lifetime. And that's why I'm capping the group at 15 men so I can get to know each one of you deeply and we can make 2021 the year of your quantum leap. If you want to feel perpetually comfortable, this program is definitely not for you. If you want to grow, lean into fear and shred through illusion and limiting beliefs to be the freest, most ravenously loving and powerful version of yourself yet, then keep listening. So we have 68,000 thoughts a day, and I've said this before on this podcast, about 98% of those are repeated, meaning that the thoughts that you're rehearsing in your resistance and the thoughts that pop up to stop you from doing things are the same programs you're running all day long in your subconscious, every day. So what's happening if we zoom out with all of those little thoughts? Those micro thoughts that you're rehearsing and that are looping through your neural pathways, these are the threads that weave together to become the fabric of your life. That's why you hear of the cliche of a man on his deathbed full of regrets, right? Life happens so fast. And if we are not conscious of those tiny little threads weaving our reality, we come away at the end with something that we didn't plan for. So if you want to learn how to become a conscious creator of your life, to make love to your life and your woman like a warrior, I want you to fill out this application. My job in this process is to help you through any fears and resistances that come up for you, to help you find clarity on making a decision, whether that's a hell yes or an empowered no for now. If you're a man listening to this, and if you're feeling a tug at your soul, I want you to just take the next step of following the breadcrumbs like many other men and head to hallierose.com/men. Check out the application, see if it excites you, see if it attracts you, or see if it even triggers you. Because even the act of filling out this application and sitting deeply with the questions is likely going to bring you some gift of self-reflection. If you're a woman listening to this and you wish your man, brother, friend, lover could understand you more, could listen to your words more deeply or intimately connect with your heart, show up for you or tune into your body without trying to fix you or your emotions, feel free to pass this information along to him. The program is 3 months. We'll have weekly video calls with me and your conscious brotherhood. We'll go over the 6 pillars of a conscious man, and the program starts in January 2021. And I'm doing enrollment calls from now until the spaces are full. To fill out the application and set up a call with me, head to hallierose.com/men. That's HALLIEROSE.com/men. Now, without further ado, let's step into the thought room with Justin Wren. Justin Wren, welcome to the Thought Room. I'm so pumped that we made this happen.
I am too. This is going to be great. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to start off with the story of how we met.
Sure. Please.
Because it's pretty unique. It's pretty synchronistic, I believe. And so a couple of weeks ago, you started following me on Instagram.
Right.
And I looked at your profile and I was like, who is this MMA fighter? Something I don't really know a lot about. And I started browsing through your stuff, your work. And something stopped me. And I paid attention. And I started to go through, and in the words that you were writing and in the things that you were posting about, I felt this rapturous sense of awe. I can't really describe it, but I just went, this is a powerful person that I need to know. And so, I hit you with the follow back and I sent you a message and I said, hey, thank you so much for connecting, something like that. I really dig what you're putting out into the world. And we'll get into that in a minute about what you're actually doing. And you said something back. I can't remember exactly what. But we got to talking about fit for service somehow.
Right.
How'd that come up? Do you remember?
I thought you were in the Fit for Service tribe. I saw you somewhere on Instagram. And then all the people we had in common were fit for service. And I just joined.
And I think I had asked you how you found me.
Right.
And you said that you heard me on Alex Nelson's podcast.
Yes, actually, that is correct.
Okay, so you heard me on our friend Alex Nelson's podcast.
Through the Veil? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, amazing. How do you know Alex? And you said, well, I'm in Fit for Service. And I went, no way. I've been in that program. And I said, are you going to Sedona next week? And you were like, yeah, I'm going for the Fit for Service summit in Sedona. And I said, so am I. This is crazy. And I said, where are you staying? And you said, oh, I'm staying with my friend Eric Morris, who also has been on my podcast. And I said, wait a minute, I'm staying in that house too. So suddenly we discovered, that we were going to be in the same place at the same time. And
which was pretty wild because I just followed you because you looked amazing. And you are. And it's awesome whenever you initially feel that about someone, but then you don't know it for sure. You sense it, you feel it, and you expect it almost. But then and we'll get into it, but the world that I've been in through professional sports and things like that, sometimes you see behind or through the veil or behind the curtains, right? And people are different. And so the way that everything happened, of how we connected, became friends, became close, was like what you said, synchronicity. And to know I just hit you with a follow, that I saw you on Alex's podcast, that then we started talking, that then all of a sudden minutes later, we find out we're going to be in the same place for a week together, basically, and in the same house, basically beside each other's rooms, you know, in the same house. An amazing place in Sedona, so gorgeous. And I'd never been there, and I knew something incredible was going to happen. But one of my favorite gifts was becoming friends with you. So it's been tremendous. You've helped me a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and you do that for so many, but I'm honored to be one of them.
Do you want to talk a little bit about our experience of Sedona?
Yeah, absolutely.
How was that for you? I know that joining this community was new, and you've had quite a year.
I've had, the hardest, best year of my life.
Yeah. And so
I'm 33.
Okay.
And I didn't think I would be where I am at 33. In some ways, I'm further beyond. In other ways, I'm further behind.
Go into that.
And, well, I guess further ahead would be due to other people's standards. How do I say it for your common listeners that probably don't watch MMA or know anything about me?
Oh, my listeners are not common.
I know that. Sorry. That's true. I meant your normal listeners, your avid listeners that listen to your podcast a lot. I guess I'm unique in a way that growing up, I got really bullied, but I broke through that and found the sport of wrestling, became in Texas at least, a 10-time state champion, a 5-time All-American, a 2-time national champion. I had 2 Olympic gold medalists as my high school coaches. And we'll get to Sedona, but I guess from right out of high school, I had college offers everywhere in the country, full scholarships. And I chose to go to the Olympic Training Center. So I was one of like 2 high schoolers to do that. And then was the national champion representing the U.S. And then got injured wrestling an Olympic bronze medalist and a world champion. I was, I think, 33, and I was 18, I think, snapped my arm, freak accident, became an oxy addict from having to wait 4 months for surgery, and they just shoveled pills down my throat. Not really, but they gave me so many prescriptions that I got hooked. And it wasn't just because I needed it for pain, although I did. My elbow is completely severed, the ulnar collateral ligament. I broke my elbow. I dislocated it. An Olympian, Chaz, who was my roommate or suite mate at the Olympic Training Center. Now he's Chad Gable in the WWE, tag team champion. But he was my coach for that, along with an Olympic silver medalist. And when it snapped, like Chaz grabbed a bucket and started throwing up because it was so bad. I was laying on my arm behind my back in a way that shouldn't be there. And it looked disgusting. And so I was at Madison Square Gardens, New York, and I took an ambulance. And right when I got there, they just gave me Oxy for the first time I've ever had it. And then I was on it for 4 months until I had the surgery. And anyways, coming out of that, I went to Iowa State University thinking I need to get a degree, have something to fall back on, because they said it was only a 30% chance I'd ever compete again.
At 18?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was kind of the youngest guy at the highest level. And then that happened again. I decided I wanted to fight. And the reason was when I was being bullied growing up, I decided that fighters don't get bullied, that they know how to defend themselves, and a lot of other things. And I love the chess match of it, the strategy. To me, it's a human chess match, and combines wrestling and jiu-jitsu and boxing and kickboxing. But even in kickboxing, there's the American style, there's the Muay Thai style, there's all the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu. And in the old days, they used to have like sumo and karate in there, which now we know doesn't really work very often, or at least taekwondo and things like that. But everyone could come and see what was the best. And then it started to evolve, where people started having to get better than just one discipline. They'd have at least 2 disciplines. Like a kryptonite for a wrestler is a striker with great jiu-jitsu. So someone that can knock you out on the feet, but then if you do put them on their back, they can submit you. Those guys are really rare. And those guys normally get to the top. But oftentimes it's the wrestlers. I think right now, probably 6, 7 out of 10 world champions all have a wrestling background like I do. And so that's because you can dictate where the fight takes place, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. Anyways, I'll fast forward through all this because I do want to get to Sedona, but my background, I guess, has been diverse in a way that I went from feeling like a nobody, feeling absolutely worthless, not good enough, and sitting at the lunch table by myself, getting pelted in the back of the head with chocolate milk spit wads or food or fist, to then champion in wrestling, to then abandoning ship on that. I'm a put all my eggs in one basket kind of guy, and I went all in with fighting at 19 years old. The UFC started looking at me. I was undefeated. I ended up going on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. It's the heavyweight edition. I'm 21. The next youngest heavyweight in the UFC was like 28, 29. And it's normally, top 10 guys in the world. I think the youngest guy is like 30 or 31, 32 right now. And champions are 40, 42. I mean, it's an older man's division because it's more strength. The little guys normally retire sooner, and because speed disappears quicker, but strength stays, and wisdom, experience, things like that.
So how was that? Talk about the Ultimate Fighter and being on that show at such a young age. What was the experience like?
I had no idea who I was. And I was already having this internal struggle that I don't know I've ever really shared, but I might have little glimpses. But I remember getting my hand raised when I won the national championship in wrestling, and the first one was fulfilling or rewarding, but the second one was empty. Mm. And it was like that with every fight. I think the first one was exciting, but then after that, this is what I thought my purpose was, or at least my worth, my value, and where my full identity lied. And because of that, every time I get my hand raised, I would there'd be thousands of people, maybe even tens of thousands of people cheering, some chanting my name or wanting pictures. And I'm getting my hand raised in there. And before I even get to soak up like all the hard work and finally the victory, I would think, is this it? Is this all? And so from there, obviously I was already battling the addiction. I was hiding that. Somehow I was a functioning addict that could still win and perform well. And so I would look forward to using after the fight, and because I could pull it together for 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 weeks and be sober before the fight. But it got to the point to where on the Ultimate Fighter, I snuck in, I wonder if I've ever shared this. I snuck in Oxy onto the Ultimate Fighter. I knew I couldn't not have it, at least some. And so I got different pill bottles. I put Oxy in there. I was just hoping that they wouldn't check to see that the pills matched the bottle. And I was using in the house on the Ultimate Fighter. There's cameras all around, cameras in the bathrooms. Not recording, but at least seeing what you're doing and seeing if they need to get in there. And no privacy, nothing to read, nothing to listen to, nothing to watch for 8 weeks. You're in a house with 15 other guys, all fighting each other to win the 6-figure contract and the title Ultimate Fighter. And I'm the young buck that didn't have to try out. There's thousands of people, I think at least over 1,000, that tried out for the show. But because of my wrestling background and because of who I was helping, literally guys that used to be on my walls as a kid, posters on my wall that I looked up to. Mm-hmm. Now I'm helping them get ready for their world championship fights. And I was 21 when it was recorded, 22 when it came out, but it was wild, I always wanted to fight a guy named Kimbo Slice, who now I became friends with, but he's since passed. But he was like the most famous street fighter of all times. And our season got 6.8 million viewers per episode. That was the average. And so it was the biggest season by far. I think most average like 800,000 or 1 million, but ours was 6.8. So it was wild. I mean, I don't think I've ever shared this, but because Kimbo was in the house and some NFL players and people found our location, so we had to have security. And we had to be escorted to and from the gym, vehicles in front and behind us, and boxed in as well to keep cars from trying to take pictures of us, They're trying to keep our identities concealed. But people were throwing cell phones over the backyard walls, and they're throwing panties over the walls. I mean, people were throwing parties outside of it and just trying to, get glimpses of who we were. And so getting off the show, we were announced at UFC 100, like the most epic UFC fight ever, I think. And there was a UFC fan expo of, I think, over 130,000 people came in and out of the doors. And I had dislocated my thumb like 13 times wrestling and fighting and different things like that, and even needed surgery on my thumb. But like signing all those autographs was wild. I had this almost like childhood autograph I would do for kids, and it was just my normal signature. And if people go back to my first Ultimate Fighter card, like literally some of them in the J and Justin, I put a smiley face. And then in the S, I do a capital S. I do a little duck I was taught in like second grade. And in the I, another one. And anyways, I was trying to do that. And they're like, you're going to have to change your signature. And I realized, oh man, I just need a J and a W and a scribble.
Wow.
And so it was really wild. I don't think I knew how to handle it because of the addiction, especially that fueled it. People were drawn to me that were really great people, and people were drawn to me that would, I don't know if it would be called feed my ego, but it would at least feed my addiction, feed my habit.
Mm-hmm.
And so from dealers to just people that had money to waste and spend on the drugs, and then also almost leech type people that wanted to take and just be around you for whatever. And so I saw a really dark side, and I started living in that dark side, and I hated myself for it. And so, yeah, I think I was 12-2 or something like that professionally. 2 fights I lost were split decisions. So that's actually on The Ultimate Fighter. They changed the rules of the whole show because of my fight. It was 10 seasons. We were the 10th season, and anyways, I'm getting too much into fighting, but it didn't go to a third round because it was a split decision. There should have been a sudden victory or a final round, and there wasn't. And so I ended up losing to the champion. And this was a couple fights in. Had done really well. Fought a UFC veteran, 6'10", Wes Sims, choked him unconscious. He's a guy that never had been submitted. And I was able to do that. And so it looked like the young, bright guy coming up, the up-and-comer,
Mm-hmm. The underdog story.
Underdog, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I fought Roy Big Country Nelson, Dana White, the president of the UFC, Rashad Evans, who's in the Hall of Fame, Rampage Jackson, UFC champion, and all the fighters, like Justin got screwed, just absolutely screwed for not being able to fight a third round. Like there needs to be a rematch or there needs to be something done. Well, there could be nothing done on the format of the show. So I took that as it wasn't a poor sport, but I was just devastated by it.
Did it feel kind of rigged in a way, or
not rigged? No, but it felt empty. I would have rather got knocked out or submitted, without a doubt.
Yeah,
gone out on my shield
it's like unfinished business.
Instead of going out with one person thinking I won and 2 thinking he won, and only fighting 2 rounds.
Right.
Like there should have been a third, and even if in that third I got finished or finished him, we will never know.
Right.
And so that competitor in me felt robbed a bit. And so that just fueled my addiction. And I'll get to a part where, I'm invited to be part of the best fight team in the world in Denver, Colorado. People from New Mexico are coming up, down from Canada and Toronto, or Montreal, world champions. And we're cross-training all together. But I can't even make it to their fight camps because I'm an addict. And I was 8 weeks a missing person. And so I disappeared in the mountains of Colorado and was hopping around, I guess, from drug house to drug house. And
how old are you at this point still?
23.
23.
Yeah, so from 21 to 23. And I remember waking up with this guy cupping the back of my head. And I had he had a bottle of water. And in that bottle of water, he's saying, Justin, you got to drink. That's what I came back to. And I'd never been so freaking thirsty in all my life. Never been so thirsty. I can't even explain the thirst that I had. But I had these like cold chills and this like heat wave that came over my body, and I'm shaking. And I crushed that bottle of water. And like half of it goes all over me and this couch, and half of it goes into my mouth. And I'm scared. I look at this guy, I have no clue who he is. And I say, "Who are you?" And he says, "Who am I? Justin, who am I? You've been sleeping on my couch for 2 weeks. You've been eating my food. I've been sharing my drugs. What do you mean, who am I? Like, I met you out, I brought you here." And it just rocked me. It rocked me. I had to hitchhike back to Denver. I had no clue where my car was. And in that process, I started checking some voicemails. I had over 80 voicemails. And my mom crying on the phone. She had broken into my place, found pill bottles of Oxy, a loaded gun, cocaine, bongs, liquor bottles, and just a mess or a wreck of a place that I was living. And so I remember checking my voicemail, and it was my best friend, the one that got me into MMA, that got me my first 2 fights. And he said on the voicemail, "I can't believe you missed my wedding. I can't believe my best man didn't show up." And that crushed me, that I crushed him, that I left that dark cloud over his wedding day. And so, and right before that, he goes, "I've left you many voicemails, worried, concerned. I love you. But I just have to let you know how hurt I am." And so that rocked me. It kind of scared me sober, but it also devastated me that I was this hurting dude. Hurt people. And I was that guy. I was hurting people that only loved me and only cared about me and had never hurt me before, who only wanted the best for me, but I could not help but hurt them. And that was 10 years ago. And it's kind of ironic because at 13, I was suicidal because of bullying. And there's this crazy bullying moment in my life that kind of caused this like repeat in my mind, in a dark place that I go that's become self-talk.
Can we go there?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Wherever you want to go, Hallie Rose, we'll go there.
Thanks, Justin Wren.
This is where a lot of my, I guess, childhood trauma comes from, and at least depression. I found out, and I'll share where I found this out, but on the ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, if you have 4 out of 10, you're 15 times more likely to attempt suicide in your life. Oklahoma, where I'm at now, where we're at, has the worst ACE scores in the country of any other state.
What kind of things contribute to that score?
Sexual abuse, child abuse, divorce.
Poverty, probably.
Incarceration, the parent being incarcerated. So Oklahoma has the 3rd highest incarceration rate, but the 1st highest for females. 85% of them are mothers. And number 2 for child abuse. Number 1 for substance abuse. So having an addict parent or both. So similar things like that. So I had 7 out of 10 on that score, which is very, very rare. And anyways, I didn't know that until a few months ago, maybe about 6 months ago. And going back to this moment, you
went to a pretty rough school, right? Did you? No?
Yes and no. It's really rough now. It was getting rough when I was there. It used to be this small country town, and then the kind of rougher part of Fort Worth, Texas, started to expand into it, and they kind of pulled people from the projects and like mobile home parks and things like that, and started shuttling them into our school district. And but some of the country kids, just some of them were, that farm boy tough and also farm boy mean. And so I went to the school. I wasn't, from 3rd grade to 8th grade, I wasn't really welcome to sit with many people at the lunch table. Oftentimes, not all the time, but things happened in the locker room that were terrible. Things happened at homecoming that were terrible. But just to kind of sum it all up, I got invited to my middle school crush's birthday party, and she was so wonderful to me. The biggest crush I'd ever had from elementary, middle school, high school, without a doubt. We'll just say her name's Jennifer. That's what her name is in my book. And so, anyway, she was this little hot thing, I guess, or just beautiful. She was an actress, like a high level one. And
how old were you again?
13.
13. Okay.
Yeah, 8th grade. And so I think I might have been 12 at the time. I turned 13 during 8th grade. And I got an invitation to her birthday party, and everyone had them. Not everyone, but certain people had them. And they were talking about it because it was a costume contest, and the winner was going to get a prize. And it was a pretty incredible prize, at least to us. In Texas, Dr. Pepper is something to be prized. I think it started in Texas, Dr. Pepper, and there's a Dublin Dr. Pepper plant. I think it's since been shut down in the last couple of years, but Dublin Dr. Pepper is like the Mexican Coke. They use the imperial cane sugar, and you can only get it from showing up to Dublin, Texas, and buying it there. They don't sell it outside the town. And so it's this pilgrimage people go on in Texas to go load up on it. And her dad worked at Dr. Pepper, and it was going to be a Dr. Pepper gumball machine that the costume contest winner was going to win. And then the rumors at school were that they had a Dublin Dr. Pepper machine in their house because he was like an executive there or something like that. And so anyways, everyone was talking about what costume they were going to wear. And, people were going to be Avengers, and I don't know, I'm a little Viking guy. So then I should have been like little Thor, but instead I decided to go as her favorite character from Transformers. Excuse me. And I thought if I could transform into something that she liked, maybe I could catch her eye for the first time. And so my mom helped me, being a country kid, having some duct tape, and saving my allowance, spending my allowance on a bunch of Dr. Pepper. I was walking in a grocery store, and I got inspired because they had this, it was football season, and they had this like football player, Dr. Pepper like thing sitting there, like out of the cardboard boxes. They made a display. And I was like, ooh, I could transform into Dr. Optimus Pepper. And so I decided that's what I would do. And that's how I'd catch her eye. And so my mom helped, and she helped duct tape me all up, and I had a chest plate and a shield and a sword, and I had 12 packs on my arms as forearm things, and I had a helmet, like a 24 pack on my head, and it looked pretty awesome. And my mom said, Jennifer's gonna love this. And so she took me there. I was feeling actually confident for one of the first times, and I got there and I went all out, pulled out all the stops, and my mom supported it. And I get out, I go to the front door. Mimi opens the door, her grandmother, and Mimi looks shocked and also awesome, like happy, saying like, Jennifer's gonna love this. I walk into the living room, and there's the Dr. Pepper machine. I push the button without even paying, and a Dublin Dr. Pepper pops out. I grab that. I'm trying to hold a shield and sword in one hand and the Dublin Dr. Pepper in the other. And she said, all the kids are out back. And so I walk out back, and when the door opens, I was hit with a couple flashes of light, and I heard the sound of laughter, and my eyes kind of adjust. And you know how it is when you get hit by flashing light, and so I see that nobody's dressed up, not one person. And Jennifer says, I can't believe you thought you were good enough to come to my party. And I know I probably look like a deer in the headlights, just heartbroken and stunned and shocked. And Tyler next to her said, you're worthless. And at 13, you believe the things people say about you. And so I felt not good enough. I felt worthless. And then my notorious middle school bully from 3rd grade to 8th grade, who organized the whole thing, the mastermind of it, said, his name was Justin, and we shared similar last names, and or at least a W, and I couldn't really escape him in alphabetical order or anything like that. And we were often in the same class, and he said, you should just kill yourself. And so hearing you're not good enough, you're worthless, and you should kill yourself. I accepted those as truth. Those became my truth for 10, maybe even 20 years now, almost. And I've broken free from that a lot. But when I go to a dark shadow place, that's where I go. And it's like my own inner voice now, or was. And yeah, at 13, I ran away from that party, literally just ran away, and ran behind a dumpster at a Dairy Queen. And I ripped off all the cardboard from my chest and jeans and had all the residue, like sticky residue on me. And I sat in a ball and hugged my legs and sobbed and wept. And I think I even let out a little yell or scream, and then I just was almost like whimpering. I know it sounds stupid or silly, but I was like whimpering. And I don't know how much time passed, but it was quite a while. And I felt so alone. I felt so worthless. Felt like I didn't belong here. And I always kind of had that sense. Maybe not as a pure kid, but once the bullying started at 3rd grade, I wondered what was wrong with me and why I was different, why people didn't like me, and why I didn't like myself. And an employee came out, and they were throwing away the trash, these big trash bags, black trash bags. Said, "Oh, honey, what's going on? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong?" And I was crying and told her I just need to call my mom. And so I did. And my mom, I guess, had been looking for me, obviously. And but this is before cell phones. So I had to call and leave a voicemail. And I think we were talking about this not too long ago, my mom and I. She had to go home, check the voicemail, find out I'm at Dairy Queen, run out there. It's after they're already closed. I think like 2 employees stayed. And I told her what happened. She decided to get me out of that school. They had talked to the school about bullying before, but now it had gone too far. And then I was seen by a doctor or psychiatrist, and not just diagnosed with like ADD, not ADHD, but just attention. And I couldn't focus in school. I didn't feel like I belonged. And but I was also diagnosed with clinical depression. But it was a few weeks after that I found MMA. It was obviously devastating, but something funny enough, or ironically enough, like that gave me hope was when I went to a flea market. I was going to buy a BB gun just for like target practice in the country, close to my barn. And I found the UFC 2 through 9 or 2 through 11. And I knew it was missing number 1. And anyways, when I saw those VHS tapes, I was like, these guys don't get bullied. If I could be one of those guys, I won't be laughed at. And if I was, I'll be strong enough to take it. And I won't be invited to the party as the laughing stock. Maybe I'll be invited to the party to attend. And I started pursuing it. I mean, becoming a student of the sport at 13 and then pursuing the sport at 15 whenever my school finally had wrestling. And I think we could almost transition into how hard this year's been. I guess what I was going to start off with before Sedona, I've been able to do some pretty wild things that I never thought was possible, especially that 13-year-old me, like that thought life wasn't worth living. And then at 23, attempting suicide and, but have been able to live a great life, or a life I'm grateful to have lived so far. I didn't know I'd live this long because I've never stated that out loud, I don't think, but that darkness of depression that I thought was going to take my life. But I've been able to write a book, and that be an Amazon bestseller thing, and write it with a New York Times bestseller, and have a TED Talk in London, and be on my buddy Joe Rogan's podcast 8 times, and the Ultimate Fighter TV show, and spoke at the Edinburgh Castle in Scotland, and things that I never thought I would ever be able to do, because I grew up with a speech therapist from kindergarten to 6th grade. And that was one of the reasons I was bullied. And public speaking is my number one fear without a doubt, but I've learned to just embrace that nervous energy. And if I'm tired or if I get really nervous, like a stutter will come out. And but if I feel like the statements I've learned from you, some of them, like if I learn to just drop in and just be present and try to give more and focus on that rather than how nervous I am, it normally turns out okay. But
you even turned down, you were telling me you turned down a bunch of public speaking in the beginning because of your fear, and they were like decent paid gigs. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about that?
I turned down my first 9 speaking engagements, which I didn't understand why people were asking me to speak. I remember telling the last 3 or 4, thank you for the offer, but I'm a fighter, not a speaker. I don't have the ability to do that. That was my exact statement. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's wild because you're a fantastic speaker.
Oh, hey, well, thank you for that. But and no, just the saying I don't have the ability, that limiting belief and limited perspective. And
when did that change?
Oh, it changed at an airport in Las Vegas, actually in the sky. I was with a guy that after that moment where I missed my best friend's wedding and actually attempted suicide through overdose at 23. I came out of that and I was invited on a retreat. Well, I thought it was kind of like a sobriety retreat, and then they'd find me a rehab to go to, or a treatment center. And so I agreed to it, but I was 3 weeks out from my next fight, and I was about to be the main event at the Hard Rock Casino in Las Vegas.
Wow.
You can't just go on a 1-week retreat. Mm-hmm. It's the most important week of training, actually. That's the peak week where you really just push it, just leave it all out there. And but I knew I needed something because I had gotten kicked off my fight team, best fight team in the world, and I was training with a high school wrestling team. I was training with like high schoolers to be the main event at the Hard Rock in Vegas. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And not smart. And I ended up going on this retreat. It ended up being a faith-based retreat, which for me, I had so many judgments against and never, ever wanted to be in a faith-based community because I saw it hurt people, not help people. And I saw how hypocritical it was. And I had some deep-wounded, like deep-seated church hurts from growing up and family that did it wrong. And so when I found that out, I said, no, I'm not going. And then they said, it's paid for. And I go, well, sorry, you wasted your money, the person that sponsored me. And then the next day I woke up and then I had a plane ticket. And I said, you really just wasted your money, Mr. Youth Pastor. Like, you need to spend this on your wife and your kids. Don't spend it on me, you're wasting it. And he goes, no, I'm not wasting it. You need to come. And so anyways, I said no again. And then I wake up the next day and my best friend, who was my training partner, called me and said, who's this guy and why do you buy me a plane ticket and a retreat? And he said, I need to come with you to train because you fight in 3 weeks. Mm. That was one of my excuses. I got to train. And so he came, and I guess all I would explain, to not push any sort of religion on anybody, was I experienced a God of love. And I would say that loved the hell out of me and blessed the mess out of me. And I had a spiritual experience, which gave me a complete psychic change, at least in that moment. It's been ongoing, but in that moment, it was what I really needed. And so 6-7 months later, I'm at an airport and I'm sober, and I'm just from that 1 week of like being on my face, leaving my snot in the carpet there. It was at the Hallmark family's like ranch and wild horses running around, and the hill country of Texas, where you'll be moving pretty close to soon. today. And I was at the airport, and this is the 9th time I turned it down. And my agent at the time called me and said, hey, the Air Force Academy wants you to do a commencement speech at their graduation. I was like, what? Me? Why? I've never spoke. And they're like, someone knows you, someone's seen you, someone's heard you. And they really want you to do that. I was like, doesn't that go to like military people? Like, don't they give those kind of speeches? And I don't know if I was the main speaker or just one of the speakers. I never let the conversation go very far but I know it was for $3,000, just the initial offer. And I needed that because I had stopped fighting to develop a foundation and sobriety and a different life and a life of having a growth mindset and not just being a fighter, but being more than that. And I'd heard the quote, no act of kindness, no matter how small, ever goes wasted. So I started volunteering at a children's hospital and then the at-risk youth group and then the homeless shelter. And then I was just a shotgun, just going anywhere and everywhere I could, head on a swivel. Where can I make a difference? How can I help? And that helped me as I helped others. But it started small. It wasn't like this huge thing always. And but anyways, I was at the airport. I said, no, I can't do that. I'm a fighter, not a speaker. I don't have the ability to do that. And something in me told me to call Jeff. And Jeff was the guy that made me go on that retreat where everything changed. And so I called him. And his first thing was, did you pray about it? And I go, what? Why do I need to pray about it? At this time, I wasn't a dude that prayed. And he goes, what do you mean, why do you need to pray about it? You need to pray about it. I go, oh, is God just going to like open the clouds and speak to me and say, hey, be a public speaker now? He goes, do you need the money? And I go, well, yeah. He goes, well, why are you denying like an opportunity to be blessed and to provide for yourself and like put a roof over your head and groceries in your fridge, you know? And well, that makes sense. But like, I go, I don't need to pray about it because God wouldn't ask me to do something I'm not good at. And I'm supposed to use my talents. And he goes, well, that might make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to people that have been like experiencing God and his love for a while. If you live a life where you don't need God, you know, what's the purpose of God? And he goes, he doesn't need your ability. He's not looking for your ability for God, but your availability to God. And I was like, whoa. So he told me to pray about it. And I'm at the airport and I'm in Vegas and I'm headed to Denver. And I go, I'll pray about it when I get home. I go, I've never really like prayed by myself before. And he goes, no, you need to pray about it right now. And I said, I'll pray about it when I get home. He goes, right now. And I go, okay, on the plane. He goes, no, right now. I go, Jeff, like they're calling us to board. I use that as my out. And he goes, no, right now. And I go, all right, I'll pray right now. I had no intention to. And I start getting on the plane. This is actually a meaningful story to me because I just lost someone close to me. And I start getting on the jetway. I give him my ticket and then I get a text message. And it's all capital letters. Jeff said, pray about it right now, exclamation points. And I'm like, shoot. So anyways, I just say a little mental prayer, eyes open, walking down the jetway. And I'm saying, God, if you want me to be a speaker, you've got to make this so real I can't deny it. Slap me upside the head with it, and then I'll do it. But if not, I'm never doing it. Amen. And I sit on the plane, and this older gentleman in his 70s starts talking to me. Wow, this was like 10 years ago. And so I guess he was 73. And he wants to know my story. I start sharing a little bit with him. I share about the darkness. I share about the suicide attempt. I share about getting kicked off my fight team, but how they're starting to invite me back on the fight team, that I've gotten sober, that my life started to change. I've started to help people. And he just stops me and goes, hey, have you ever shared your story? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, publicly. Like, are you a public speaker? And I go, no. And he said, you should be. And I said, what? He goes, he starts sharing his story with me. And his story was just featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated, I think, or at least the website a few weeks ago or months ago. His life's a movie. There's some of my dyslexia coming out. But then his life is a movie. He was a world champion surfer turned jewel thief, robbing the JP Morgan collection.
What?
Yeah. This is Jack Murph the Surf Murphy. He was a world champion longboard surfer from Miami who then became the guy to pull off the largest jewel heist in American history, but in the world's history at that time.
And you're sitting next to him.
On the plane. Right after I say this prayer. And he very synchronistic, right? Like supposed to happen. And he starts telling me this wild story, how he robbed the National Museum of History or whatever in New York. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. And then I was running drugs in Miami, and some bad people did some bad things, and I helped dispose of some bodies. And I was like, oh, shoot. And he goes, and then I was put in prison from 2000. I was so like 2-3 life sentences, and he wasn't supposed to be let out until 2,244. Yeah. And I'm sitting next to him on the plane. And I'm like, what? Who did I just sit next to? And he goes, but God changed my life in prison through Roger Staubach, the NFL Super Bowl champion, and a guy named Bill Glass. And anyways, he said, now I've been able to share my story of transformation, personal transformation, and how bad and rotten of a dude I was to millions of prisoners, over 3 million and counting. I'm like, what? And he pulled out a yellow legal pad and he put it down in front of me and he goes, you're going to come speak with me in Dallas in 2 weeks. Have you ever been to Dallas? I'm like, that's where I graduated high school. That's where my family's from. And I'm like, but I'm not speaking in 2 weeks. I got to be trained. I got to be coached. I don't want to go into things unprepared. He goes, I'll have an NFL player speaking with you and I'll also speak with you. And I said, man, I can't do this. He goes, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever prayed about it? And I kind of laugh and I pull out my phone and I show him Jeff's text saying, pray about it right now, like while I'm boarding the plane. And he goes, okay, well, tell me what you prayed, because you seem pretty resistant to this, but you need to do it. And I go, well, I prayed, God, if you want me to speak, you need to make it so apparent I can't deny it. You need to slap me upside the head with it. And he goes, wow. Well, you don't think this is pretty apparent? And I go, it is. This is powerful. But I just need something to, make sure that, I'm supposed to do this. So literally Jack just reached behind my head and gave me a little slap on the back of my head. And he goes, there you go. God just slapped you upside the head. You're coming in 2 weeks. And so he started training me right there. Started saying,
wow.
This is what your life was like before. This is the darkness. This is that turning point, that transformation. And I'm like, wow. And 2 weeks later, I was in a juvenile detention center speaking to 300 in Dallas. There was a 9-year-old in the juvenile detention center. And you want to know what's so crazy? We can fast forward now because I've never shared this with anyone. There was a young man there named Matt. So I won't say his last name, but Matt was in the juvenile detention center when I shared my story for the very first time. He said it was powerful, but he said that he remembers my hand shaking. And he remembers how my voice scratched and how nervous I was. Well, I met him again May 16th, because I have never shared this before ever publicly. It's a very small knit group that knows this. But like my board of directors for my nonprofit, my mom, and some of my closest friends. But I met him May 16th because I checked in May 15th to rehab. A place called Stonegate in Azle, Texas, a little horse ranch. And Matt checked in on May 16th. And whenever he got there, he goes, Justin Wren, you spoke in Henry Wade, you spoke in Lone Star Juvenile Detention Center. I remember hearing your story. What are you doing here? Mm-hmm. And I'd felt so much shame about having to check myself into a 90-day drug treatment center 10 years after I probably should have done it. But I'd broken free enough on my own, and I felt And then whenever I relapsed hard, but I needed some sort of confirmation that I was there for a reason. Maybe God had brought me there. And that I'd chosen the right place, because I could have gone to Scottsdale, the Meadows, or Passages in Malibu, or Betty Ford in LA, like these, I don't know, upscale ones that give you your green smoothie in the morning. But I chose to go to the place for the last resorts, the lost causes. I was in there with a Stanford professor that had gone to 9 treatment centers. I was in there with another heroin addict that had been to 15 treatment centers. And I just wanted to be one and done. So I did my research, and I'm like, I need a hardcore place that's like a 12-step completion program, a big boot camp. I don't want to just go and meditate and have someone coddle me. And I need to have this shit uprooted. And I need to do some deep work, and I need some hard truths, and I need to look at my darkness and face it. And I need to be coached. I need to go into fight camp with the hardest fight I've ever fought, depression, suicide, and addiction, And when I relapsed this time during COVID, I had gone through a divorce with my partner of 8 years, who I adored and loved, and she loved and adored me, and she's such a great person. Just has a lot of darkness, and so do I. And so I couldn't help her, she couldn't help me, and we were in this toxic environment where we didn't know what to do, and we didn't know how to help each other with our trauma. And we went to counseling for 2 years, and in counseling, we started to heal individually quite a lot, but we started to grow apart. So we were growing individually, but we weren't growing together. And so when we got our divorce, it was amicable. It was so kind, which is so weird that that's what our friends and family said. This is the most kind divorce, but we went to counseling. And then the last 6 months, they just helped us with our divorce, so that we could clearly communicate, so that we could show how supportive we were of each other.
It's like conscious uncoupling almost.
Yeah, I guess that's how you describe it. I never put words to it, but I want the best for her. I released her into her new relationship she's in now, and we just got divorced in January. And I wanted her to be blessed and to find a man that she loves and cherishes her. And she's going to be a rock star mom. I think she's going to be a rock star counselor. She's finally in school to be a counselor, and she's got a lot to give. So I'm proud of her, and I absolutely want the best for her. But still, I was just kind of holding it all together. A high school helped us raise $364,000 in a week, their philanthropy week. They put on 36 events. I guess they did it for a couple months before. And I was just on E. I was pouring out what I didn't have. I was denying my self-love and trying to give it to everybody else. And I just had this crash and burn. After that week, I thought I could have a joint and with some friends, and I did. And then all of a sudden it just took me. It gripped me, and it turned from pot to Oxy to drinking to Coke to Xanax, and all of it at the same time, to where I was in a hotel all by myself, to where I ended up in a trailer park with some drug dealers. And then I ended up in Mexico. I guess Mexico was before the trailer park, but.
How are you feeling during this time? Do you remember any of it?
Yeah. Well, I don't really remember much except for.
And what month was this again?
March 1st or 2nd.
2020.
May 15th, yeah.
This year.
Yeah, this year's been the hardest year of my life. Divorced January, pulled it all together to have the most amazing fundraiser we ever had for a purpose I truly believe in. You could never not believe it's a worthy cause, and that people are worth the fight, and that I'm a man that is breathing to put love and compassion in action. I don't do it for myself often, but I'm learning that. You're helping that. That's what Sedona did. But,
so the trailer park and Mexico and.
Yeah. So I went down to Mexico. Well, I'll share the Fight for the Forgotten team found out I relapsed, and they're incredible. they've always had my back, but this time they needed to stand up to me at first and say, you're going to rehab, and then stand up for me next, where their letter to say you're going to treatment was, you say you're a person that wants to live, to love, and fight for people. It's our time to fight for you. And you put love and compassion in action. That's your personal mission statement. It's the mission of the board now to put love and compassion in action for you. We've stood behind you. Now we're standing beside you, and we're standing in front of you with a shield. And it's time for you to take 3 months off, to go to 90 days of treatment, and to take a break and count this as a gift to yourself. Count this as a life-saving gift for you and the others you'll help in the future. And so they were so kind in it, but so firm. Also, you're going. There's no way you're not. And but that's because they found out what hotel I was at, and the police literally had to do a wellness check where they were taking the door off the hinges. And I woke up with them taking the doors off the hinges, thinking that I was dead. And I got super scared at that. And then they were sending me to a rehab that I really didn't want to go to. I looked into it. I knew someone was using heroin there. I knew it was super religious. I'm a dude that has a relationship with God, but I'm not a dude that practices these rules and regulations and rituals. That's dead, dry, dull religion that like is soul sucking instead of life giving. And so, and I support people in whatever their path is, but mine is like trying to have an authentic relationship with like a living God, like, and so a loving God is maybe the best way to put it. And so anyways, I was like, I'm not going to that place. And they're like, yes, you are. You're going at 6 a.m. And I said, all right. And so I booked a flight to Mexico at 5 a.m. Kind of crazy.
Take that.
No, that was stupid of me. But anyways, I end up, my even AA sponsor said that he had gone down to that place, and the people got their phones back every day at 5 p.m. They had their computers, and whenever his sponsee was sharing his story at alumni night, everyone's supposed to be watching. Half the people are outside smoking. The other half are on their phones in front of them, and the other half are watching South Park while he's speaking and sharing his story of like recovery on his 1 year anniversary of being sober. Like nobody had respect for him. I'm like, I'm not going to that place. So I go to Mexico, and I end up going down there during COVID. They had shut down everything, and somehow it seems so symbolic to me that it was 4 flight attendants, 2 pilots, and me. There's not one other person on the plane. Not one. And I was on a one-way flight, knowing I wasn't coming back. And I was in a really dark place, thinking I had caused too much damage to ever go back. I didn't just wreck my marriage. I guess we're both contributing factors, but like I couldn't save that, and now I can't even save the organization I built, and I can't even save myself. So I fly down there, and I remember thinking this on my way down there: how would I explain suicide to someone? And I thought of, I think you've lived in the city, New York City. I thought up to the Twin Towers, and I thought how when those towers hit, or the planes hit the towers, people were in there above where the planes hit and above the flames and fires, and they jumped out the windows. And no one wanted to jump out the window at all. But it was better than staying in the burning building.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like I was in this burning building of my mind or soul, and that I didn't want to jump out, but that was the better of the 2 options, or the lesser of the 2 evils, or the easier way out. And I couldn't stay in the suffocating, burning, smoke. And So anyways, I get to Mexico. I go from Cancun to Playa del Carmen. Somehow I find myself in like the home of some cartel members. And it's the top of this apartment building, but they had like a waterfall and hot tub and pool and one of those infinity pools. And it was like a jungle theme on top of this. It was wild. And there's like guys with guns. And I mean, it's pretty intense. I've been around stuff like that before though. And anyways, I buy some drugs and I buy, I don't know, a bunch of Oxy 80s, which when people get surgeries, they get 5 or 10 milligram 80s. I think when I went into the Ultimate Fighter, I took 20 milligram 80s, but this was 5 80s. I mean, I bought more than that. I bought some 80s. I bought some Xanax 2 milligrams. I bought a bunch of Coke, and I bought, I asked them if they had Molly or MDMA. I'd never had that before. And they said they had the pure form. And I was like, oh, great, what's that? And they gave me this like crystallized form of it. And it was this pinkish crystal and yellowish pink and or red. I'm partially colorblind. I'm not really entirely sure, but that's what they told me. And so I go back to my place. I had, I guess you'd say, fun for a day or two. And then I decided this is the day. And my room was right on the beach, right on the water. So step out the room and your toes are in the sand. And it was around noon or 2 p.m. And I took 5 Oxy 80s, crushed them up, and made these lines of them. And then I took the Xanax 5, 2 milligrams. 2 milligrams are the strongest Xanax. I was drinking tequila during this. I hate tequila. I don't know, other people love it. I hate it. And it makes me want to vomit. And that's where I get in these depressed states. I was eating bread. I'm gluten-free because I have celiac, right? Like I'm in this self-harm mode of like, I'd been eating food that's bad for me, that's making me nauseous, that's making me sick, that's making my joints swell, that's making me have a headache, that's making me lethargic, that's making me want to curl up into a ball. And I take the pill, I take the 5 2 milligram Xanax, I snort the 5 80s, which that's like 400 milligrams of Xanax, Oxy, 400 milligrams. Like, and then I take the fattest line of cocaine I've ever taken, which was like a Sharpie size.
Wow.
And then I drank about 3/4 of a bottle of tequila. Maybe just over half, but it was like a handle. It was a lot. And for anyone, even a big guy like me. And my motor skills started to slow. Things started to dim and get darker. And I just knew I was going out. I knew that I was not going to be here. And that it was over. And I was okay with that for some reason. I'd gone 20 years of feeling this way, off and on, but from 13 years old, being suicidal, not having an opportunity to do it, at 23 doing it, but failing. And this time was like, yeah, I'm not going to fail. And so things started slowing, thoughts started like stopping, if that makes sense. And I started getting cold. I started getting numb. This is at noon or 2 p.m., something like that on April 5th. And something in me, in my spirit, whispered or screamed, like, take that crystal, like that Molly, that MDMA. And that was the last thing I could physically do. It was so hard for me to even crush it. I didn't have strength in my hands, really, totally. And I crush it up and I snort it. And I just snorted it in both nostrils. And it was the hardest burn I've ever felt in my life. It was so hard to get the second nostril because it was like a flame up the nose. It was like this chemical, right, of like chemical burn in my nostrils. Like not good for the nose or flesh, but I didn't really care at that time. And I remember falling backwards onto the bed. I'd tried to stand back up and I fell backwards, and the bottom half of my calf and feet are hanging off the bed. And everything just went still and dark, and I was gone or out, and somehow at about 6 a.m. the next morning, I awake. I wake back up, and I'm like trying to find the right word. I'm almost speechless that I'm here, but I instantly think, oh shit, I'm still here. And I'm kind of blown away by that. And I remember thinking, and oftentimes I don't cuss, especially on podcasts with like kids that watch sometimes. I just remember thinking, fuck, I'm alive. And I go and I get up, and it's hard to stand up, and I walk out, I slide the door, and I step into the sand, and I go and I get into the ocean. And I'm in not swim trunks, but I go and I get in anyways, and I didn't take a towel. I just instantly got into the water. And when my toes were in the sand, I felt a little bit of like groundedness, but so much shamefulness. And I get in the water, and I'm feeling so much shame, guilt, depression, like remorse, embarrassment, and foolishness, and just tons and tons and tons of shame. More shame than I've ever felt in my life. And I started in the water as I got neck deep. I started feeling a hint of like gratefulness, and that gratefulness started to kind of rise as like each wave came in. There was like a little more gratefulness, and it was like this teeter-totter between gratefulness and shamefulness. And more, I don't know, weight or rise of gratefulness came in, and the sun wasn't up yet when I walked out, and I just started tuning into my breath, just breathing and thinking like, I'm still here. And as I became more grateful for that, instead of shameful that one, it wasn't a success, and shameful that two, like I just attempted that again, and three, that like I'm in such a dark place. I've disappointed the people that love me the most. And when the gratefulness finally outweighed the shamefulness, I decided to open my eyes as I caught my breath, and I look out, and there's the horizon, and it's not 2 seconds, maybe 3 at most, but it was like this little, sun appeared right on the horizon, and it popped up, and it wasn't little, but it was gorgeous. But I just instantly felt this whisper in my spirit that said, you're not done yet. And that meant so much to me, but it made me cry. And I just sat there in the water, having these kind of healing waters over me, and this sun, this light start to kind of push back, or that darkness, or brighten that darkness of the darkest night of my life. Darkest moment of my life. And I just knew that, I just felt that whisper again that this isn't my legacy, that this isn't my destiny. To have helped some people in my life. If people know my story, they know the journey of the nonprofit, and it's like, you're not going to have tried to help these people and then decide to go down to Mexico and throw it all away and use all the drugs you can and die. And so in that moment, I decided I'm going to come back. I'm going to come home to Oklahoma. I'm going to confess to my board that I just attempted suicide, that I need help, that I won't make it without rehab and another new, fresh spiritual experience and tools tools for the first time to fight against this addiction, and a game plan and a strategy to win, finally. I had 4 years sober completely. And when I tanked hard, just rock bottom instantly, to where they were checking the hotel, and to where I'm in Mexico. Mexico made sense to me, which is such a gross rationalization that if I go to Mexico and I die there, at least they don't have to deal with me. At least they don't see my body. At least they don't find me. What would I have done to that person there? Just because I don't know them doesn't mean that they're not worth just as much as my loved ones I know. Like, how devastated and tragic would that be for them? And anyways, I come back, and I went down to Tulum for 5 days because no flights were coming back. And I sit in the waters down there in Tulum and just feel like, I need to make a comeback. I need to get back to the person that I know I can be, or even beyond that. And finally have self-love and self-discipline. And so I tell them, and we start looking at a new place called Stonegate. I get in there. I come back. I don't need to take too long of a time on this, but I end up having to take 3 different COVID tests just so that I could get into rehab. I'm like, what are these other people having to do? But I had been international, so they put more restrictions on me. And so I have to go to 2 places in Oklahoma, and a 3rd place. My friend David Sinclair from Harvard, he wrote Lifespan and has been a Joe Rogan guest several times, and me and him have hung out, and he's a really good dude. We've been to Laird and Gabby's hot tubs and saunas and pools. And anyways, he sends me a COVID test that he was creating from Harvard, and he had one left over, and said he knew there was a reason, but he didn't know why. And when I called him, he rushed it to me so that way I could get into Stonegate. But I had to wait for him a few days to get that test. And when I was driving down, I relapse again, end up in this trailer park. And it was like The Walking Dead, because this was a bunch of meth addicts and heroin addicts and people shooting up meth, shooting up heroin, smoking these bongs of heroin and meth. And I'd never done anything like that, never seen it. And
so you're trying to get to rehab.
I'm trying to get rehab, and I get denied. On my drive down there, they tell me that we can't check in until I have this 3rd test. So now I have to wait for it to be in the mail. And I thought I was just going to go fishing. I went fishing. When I get off the boat, I have some fish to clean. I look over, there's some guys hitting a bong. I thought it was marijuana. And that would kind of cool my anxiety, calm my anxiety. I knew I shouldn't have touched it, but I did anyways. And I thought it was a dab they were taking, like of the concentrate. I take it in, and it's the coolest smoke, smoothest smoke I've ever felt in my life. And all of a sudden I realize that's not marijuana. And I ask them what it is, and they go, "That's meth. You never had meth?"
Oh my
and I'm
God.
like, "Oh shoot, what did I just do?" I'm like, "Well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it." And so they had the bong juice in there. I drink that. It keeps me up for 6 days.
Oh my God.
6 days I can't sleep.
Describe what you're feeling in your body doing meth for the first time.
Complete euphoria of like, I can get stuff done, confidence. Like complete elevated everything.
6 days you were awake.
6 days I was awake, couldn't sleep.
With these people?
Yeah.
Were you with them? Yeah.
After that, I went over to their place and didn't sleep on their couch, but stayed on their couch. But I saw some things that I would never want anyone else to ever see. It was like hell on earth. And
just dark energy.
Dark energy, and people coming in there that haven't slept for a week or 10 days, or people that say they slept 2 or 3 times a month. I'm like, what? And like, I don't want to go into some of the really crazy dark stuff, but the thing that scared me was a drug dealer was coming to kill the dealer I was staying with. I heard him say that on speakerphone. And So I had to get this guy out of his trailer, throw all his stuff in my car, but my car was loaded because I was going to treatment. I didn't know if I was going to stay in Texas afterwards. So my trunk, my back seat's loaded. And so I have to take all his stuff, throw it in a boathouse down at the lake. And then we had to load his stuff up. I get him to a hotel. The next day, I'm like, I got to get the heck out of here. And so I go down to the boathouse, start loading my stuff up. I look into the water and I look across the water and I see these police. And they have these poles with these almost like a dog catching thing. But I look in the water and there's a dead body floating. And I'm like, oh my goodness. What is going on? Did that person kill themselves? Did they get killed? Did they OD? And now I'm sleepless for 6 days and nights. And I'm loading my stuff, and this doesn't look suspicious at all.
Right.
And I'm like, I got to get out of here. So right from there, I went to rehab.
Do you know that person were they involved in I
have no clue.
Wow.
I have no clue. I just got out of there. I was like, peace.
It's intense.
Yeah. I knew if I wasn't out of there then, I was never getting out of there.
Right.
I came back and saw my team. And Jordan and Kelsey are so sweet, but they saw me just sobbing, saying, I have to get to treatment. If I don't, I'll die. I'll die or I'll be in a trailer for the rest of my life. And so I go down to rehab. My AA sponsor takes me. I check in, and it's the deepest, hardest work I've ever done for 90 days. Most people got kicked out because they didn't take it seriously. This wasn't a rehab that wanted you to stick around so they could keep your money. They were like, you're going to get everything you can get out of here, or we're not letting you leave overconfident that you're going to make it, because you're not. Not unless you work a program of recovery, not unless you look at your demons, not unless you find healing from childhood trauma and PTSD. And we had military veterans, we had professional athletes, we had homeless guys, we had executive chefs, we had people that lead one of the largest D1 athletic programs, some really high performers. And they were like, if you could just break free from this addiction, you have this other gear that you can do things that others can't, or others just kind of give up on before they break through. And so anyways.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is so common. We see this a lot with high performance athletes and celebrities, these cycles of addiction. And I have my own feelings and thoughts on why that might be, just from some of the work that I've done and some of the previous jobs that I've had, working for celebrities and things like this, about the pressures of that world. And you talk about winning and feeling like getting your hand raised, but feeling empty. What are your thoughts on why we see this so much with the people that we put on pedestals?
One, I think people feel a pressure, whether it's an actor, an actress, a musician, an athlete, even religious leaders, right? I think there's unrealistic expectations put on them to be perfect or always perform well, to not show weakness, to always have the right answers, to not mess up, to live a near perfect life. And we're not saints, or they're not saints, when you're saying that, I instantly thought of three people. One I know, but I thought of Heath Ledger, I thought of Robin Williams, and then I thought of Anthony Bourdain. And Anthony I knew before he went to Congo. He had asked me, I lived in the Congo, we haven't talked about that, but he knew I had, and he had started jiu-jitsu, and his wife, was a badass at Henzo Gracie's, and I'd gone to a benefit up there for a guy we both knew and loved that had cancer, Frank, that died. And anyways, we had talked, and man, he seemed like such a great dude. He was. I shouldn't say seemed. He was such a great dude, but he must not have known it, or he must have felt the same way I did, or had a struggle with addiction. And he talked to me when he came back from Congo, laughed and joked, and said, yeah, I told you that was the one place I always wanted to go, but that's the one place I'll never go back to, ever in my life. It's the most corrupt place in the world. And and then he took his life, and it was like, oh, wow. And then I don't even think about that when I get stuck in that place. And I go that dark, that deep, into like this dungeon of depression, or depths. And so I do want to share some hopeful stuff like Sedona and a moment that I had with a vision that brought so much healing to me.
You had an incredible week.
Oh,
it was
goodness.
Super beautiful to witness. I just want to say from my personal standpoint, just watching your trajectory and watching you open up and vibe with the group and all the things that you shared. And, I'll let you share because I'm not going to share your private moments, but it was just such an honor to witness your unfolding over the week.
Yeah. Well, I've only had 2 visions in my life, like actual visions, and one came true, and that took me to the rainforest in Congo, and but I had never had anything like that happen since, and that was 10 years ago. And anyways, in Sedona, I wanted to continue the healing journey that I experienced at 90 days of rehab, which was actually more of a war zone than like a healing environment. And I wanted to feel self-love for the first time. And you and I had connected, and I went and picked you up from that amazing house with all those women, and you had fixed me food, and we're driving back, we're sharing stories, which was so incredible. And then we get to our house with so many wonderful people, incredible people. And I knew something was in the atmosphere so special. And I had just joined Fit for Service like 3 weeks before that, maybe. I'd gotten out of treatment. I knew I needed something, a tribe, a community, something I really lacked that I had in Congo with the Pygmy people who I lived with. They have some Swahili proverbs that are so powerful, but one is, if you want to go far, go alone. Or sorry, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Wow.
If you want to go fast, go alone. And I think that's what I was doing here stateside, because I didn't feel like I had a tribe a lot of times.
Yeah.
I just go alone. I just trailblaze. I lone wolf it. And, but I needed a tribe that I lacked so much that I had with the Pygmy people who adopted me in, that I lived with, that we have drilled over 70 water wells for and got back over 3,000 acres of land, and seen miracles happen with like people who never had clean water, never had land ownership, never had anything besides a twig and leaf hut, or never had a farm and had been slaves. And we've seen 1,651 people transition out of slavery and then freedom. And it's like, I look back at that now, and it's like, if they can have actual freedom from actual slavery that they were born into, like, I better be able to have some sort of spiritual experience to free me from the spiritual bondage that I've lived in, and be able to be free in a way that like I can truly help myself for the first time, as well as help others. So in Sedona, I had such a great experience at the house with everybody that set up the week. The week was incredible. The ecstatic dance, which I'd never been part of. Dancing was something that I was actually fearful of growing up, and told you're not supposed to do. And the 3-foot rule, or the don't dance or you go to hell rule, or and then the only time I ever was able to be free and able to dance was when I lived with the Pygmy people. I slept in a twig and leaf hut. I slept on the dirt. That was my bed, and the fire was my blanket, just like they lived, and did that for over a year at one time, and close to 2 years now in total. And there, the 3 things you can't take away from them are the forest, the fire, and their singing and dancing. And so we would dance and sing almost every night. And after our first water well celebration, the first time the Pygmy people ever had clean water, we danced until the sun came up, or just around a fire. And
what was that energy like?
I remember my cheeks hurting, falling asleep in so much sweat, like just wet pants, wet shirts, and just feeling a little disgusting in that way. But at the same time, so much peace and joy.
Yeah.
That it didn't matter that I was disgustingly sweaty.
I mean, that day for them must have just been like to have access to clean water with regularity for the first time in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And the joy and the celebration around a moment like that has to be ineffable.
Yeah, indescribably good.
Mm.
I would say that when the water comes out and they hear that sound of fresh water splash, whether it's in a bucket or a cup or on the ground, they used to walk 6 miles to get clean water each way. So 12 miles round trip. And oftentimes if they had any access to clean or medicine, they're washing it down with dirty water. So it saves their life, but it doesn't keep them from staying sick. And so they're fighting E. coli and cholera and typhoid and parasites and amoebas and bacterias and viruses. And when the water comes out clean, that sound hitting the ground, to me, they're in a field, a war zone, a battle against giants, right? Giants of disease. And when that water hits the ground, it sounds to me, in my spirit at least, that's the sound of giants hitting the dirt. Like that's a Goliath falling. That's some beast that they thought would never be defeated, that took out their children and their grandparents and their parents. And 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 of the Mbuti Pygmy children in Congo and the Batwa Pygmy children in Uganda, they're the worst child mortality rate in the world. 5 out of 10, so 1 in 2 or 6 out of 10 die before the age of 5. And it's because they don't have access to clean water. And so the moments that they get clean water is so much joy, so much celebration. Like I have pictures I can show you and share with you where a grandfather's jaw is dropped and his grandson's looking up at him just in awe, seeing his grandfather be so blown away that there was water underneath their feet this whole time.
Wow.
That was clean. And they say, Mungu anatupa maji. So
what's that mean?
Mungu anatupa maji, which means God gave us water. Or sometimes they say sweet water. This water's sweet. It's because it's not filthy. It's not dirty. It's life-giving.
I really want us to go back to what you're doing with Fight for the Forgotten and the Pygmies, but I want you to finish your vision first, and then we'll go into the work that you're doing.
So in Sedona, I had this vision. Well, first, what set it up was, I believe the night before, we had that moment where...
that was powerful.
Yeah. I sat there, we all shared. It was incredible, and just something ushered in a moment where there's mats on the floor, everyone's on the couches, and you and me are down there.
In front of a fire,
in front of a fire that you were tending. Almost like the Pygmy people, you never let the fire go out.
Yeah.
What a principle, right?
I love the fire. Got to keep it going.
Never let the fire go out. I was sitting there and I was there with Megan and Jason and you. And I had this moment where I just finally felt love for myself, or self-love finally penetrated my heart, where I could actually accept it. I felt worthiness when I felt so unworthy for my whole life. And I finally had a sort of kindness towards myself. And so I broke. I started to cry. Like cry.
Yeah.
And I melted into I think a butterfly stretch kind of thing. Not Indian style because my knee was bothering me, but my knee stopped bothering me in that moment completely. Do you remember what you did?
Yeah, I mean, you started to weep. And I just put my hand on you and
and then that led a chain reaction.
I just held you, actually, you know? It was powerful.
You came in and you hugged me, and loved me, like shared your love.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Megan and Jason and Reno and Lance and Sam. And,
it's funny because
like Eric. And,
Celeste. I don't know if Celeste was there, but it's funny because we talked about this moment and my eyes were closed because I was just very much in it with you. Like at first you were in your own space and I could feel the energy rising within you. And I felt, okay, he's about to cry. He's about to release. And it did. It like came up through your chest. And then I felt the little, release coming out of your throat. And then the moment that you allowed yourself to release and to almost be seen in your grief, the energy in the room changed. Everything like settled and it got really quiet. And then your emotion got bigger.
Big time.
And I moved in just to, help you ground the experience that was clearly being released. And my eyes were closed. And like I said, I was just really in it with you. And then all of a sudden, I felt hands reaching out and touching us. And the whole group moved in and we were the epicenter of the entire room. I don't know, 10 people or more just came in and focused their love energy in on you. And we just sat there. We just sat there. And it makes me emotional just to think about, but I was writing about this yesterday, about the beauty of witnessing, just witnessing each other and holding pain. And how powerfully transformative that can be as a gift to one another. When we say, I've got you, your pain matters, it's welcome here, it's safe, and you can let go now.
Yeah, that moment for me was of letting go. And letting something rise and allowing myself to be seen in a way that I've never let anyone truly see me. Like at least a room full of people. I've cried in counseling and I've cried in therapy and I cried in front of my ex-wife, but I've never like released such a deep cry of pain and grief and suffering and childhood trauma and PTSD and just all this stuff, seeing children die, being held at gunpoint, like being sexually abused as a kid, like all this stuff coming up right there in front of everyone and not being rejected for it,
right,
or laughed at because of it,
right,
or thought of as strange or what's going on or any awkwardness or any judgment whatsoever. I was completely embraced and loved, and I couldn't believe all of a sudden there was a circle of 10 or 12 hands on me with 20, 24 hands, like pushing on my back or hugging me or holding me. And I went to the deepest butterfly stretch of my life that didn't hurt whatsoever. It felt so good. And it was like this healing touch and moment.
Yeah. And afterwards, you just there was such a beautiful pause and presence. And you just said, I don't think I've ever felt this free in my life.
It's true. And this loved. And I needed that so bad and I didn't know it. And I don't think y'all knew it, but when it happened, it was just so natural. And it changed something in me, healed something in me. And it set up the next day going into breath work. And we went into breath work, and I had done Wim Hof breathing, some other things, and meditation and yoga and things like that. But this was like a 3-hour session of breath work, 30 minutes setting it up, 30 minutes finishing it out. And they said, come in, set your intention, write down one word. So I wrote down loved. And then Aubrey shares a story. They're telling us what's going to happen, what to expect. There's going to be great music, and close your eyes and just get in your own zone. And some people might have releases of laughing. Some people might have releases of crying, but just breathe. Just continue to breathe. And when you don't think you can breathe anymore, keep breathing. Mm. Breathe for the other people around you if you don't think you can do it for yourself, Aubrey told a story about the rainmaker, and basically he told the story about the rainmaker, and he shared how in some traditions or tribes that there was this rainmaker that came. He went into a hut, and there was a drought and devastation and famine, and basically he had to go get the land back in order to have the rain come. And so he stayed in there for 3 days, and then it rained. Mm-hmm. We shared that story, and he goes, the reason I'm telling you this is because we need some rainmakers today, because the pump in the well broke, and no one can use water. No one can use the toilet.
This is in the building you were in?
This was at the ranch, Aubrey's place in Sedona. And he goes, look, none of us could shower. None of us can, we can't wash our dishes. The water's gone. It's off. And I don't know how long it's going to be until they get out here to fix it, type thing. And so he said, just in your intentions, if you can think of yourself as rainmakers also, at least for part of it, let's see if the water will turn back on. and he goes, that might sound goofy, but maybe not. Maybe it'll turn back on. So anyways, I had never done anything with any of these cards or things like that, but I draw this thing, the goddess of water, which was like, oh, wow, I'm kind of a rainmaker.
Pulling an oracle card
Yeah.
before. This is the first time you've
ever done
had
that.
experience with pulling a card. Okay.
Yeah,
So the card you draw is...
Never even saw cards in my life.
What are these things?
Yeah, what are these things? And I was like, okay, I'll take a deck. I thought it would have an intention on it, or which it did. It had an intention with it, but it was the goddess of water. And that meant a lot to me, actually. I was like, oh, well, whether this is just something cool or is something spiritual, whatever it is, I'm open. And for me, I've held children that have died of dirty water, buried them, dug their graves, had blisters on my hands from digging their graves, and had some of the hardest moments of my life because of dirty water. And so to hear the rainmaker, to be a man that helps get people clean water, and to pull a card that says goddess of water, it's the only one in the deck. I was just like, that's unique. Okay, what's this about? So we start breathing, and there's these facilitators that are there, and I start breathing, just focusing on my breath as deep as I can, as far as I can let it out. And someone walks around, and the music is great. You're really able to kind of get into this space just in your own zone. And I start to see in my mind the ocean, and it's a dark ocean, and there's these dark clouds over the ocean, and it's just this dark, eerie, stormy, choppy waters, but not crazy waves. And I see this heart, and in this heart, it's dark. It's a darkened heart. It's not this brilliant red. It's this dark heart, and it starts to sink, and it's hardened, darkened, and now it's drowning, and it's deepening, going to the depths of the ocean. And I'm not scared, but I do feel a tightness in my chest the deeper it goes.
It's sinking?
It's sinking to the ocean floor, and maybe hundreds of feet, or a couple hundred, or at least 100. It's just going deeper and deeper and deeper. And as it goes deeper, I literally feel a tightening in my chest. Mm. And it's getting closer to the ocean floor. And some facilitator walks by, and I mean, it's hot, the sun's out, and we're under these tents, but they spritz some like water on me, or sprinkle some water on me. And right when they do that, at the surface of the ocean, this dive hits, and it's this golden, gorgeous, bubbly water. And it's just this stream of water that dives down, and it's almost on a mission. Like it's just swimming deep, swimming fast, headed towards that heart. And I realized like, this is my heart. This is where I was 6 months ago when I attempted suicide. And this golden water just goes towards my heart, and right before it hits the ocean floor, it catches it and it kind of encapsulates it, and it starts swirling around it. These golden bubbles, lush golden bubbles, and like this healing water over that heart, this darkened heart, dying, drowning, desperate heart. And it starts to come back to the surface, and it rises to the surface, and it starts to hover over the water, maybe like 3 or 4 feet. And this golden water is still swirling around it. And my heart's like, it was rescued. And the golden water of healing turns into this fire, this flame of love, this fire of love. And I just feel love. And it keeps swirling in this flame. And then all of a sudden it turns into this golden orb. And it's just this golden light, like this little sun. And as that light gets brighter, it starts pushing back the darkness. The dark clouds start to push back. The dark water starts to turn into this almost like Caribbean water, this like circle that starts to like push out.
Wow.
And then it turns into this gold, this like molten, metallic, melted gold, like goldsmithing gold that is around my heart. And it starts to like, instead of like this golden water around it, or this golden flame or fiery flame, or this light, bright light, it's like this, it starts to melt into my heart. And it's like this gold sets into my heart, like a heart of gold.
Fortified, smelted, sort of golden heart.
There you go.
Nice.
Good word picture, because that's what it was. And what's crazy is I felt like I was supposed to raise my hand, because my chest felt constricted at first when it was dipped, but it started getting lighter. And I noticed I had stopped focusing on my breath. And so I needed to breathe deeper again. And so I decided to raise my hands above my head. And I do, both hands. And I start breathing again. Well, one of the facilitators comes back by, and they grab my wrist. When they grab both my wrists, they slowly stretch me to where my hands are above my head. Not just in front of me, but like overhead. Right. And
opening up your chest.
Yes. Yeah. And helping me breathe deeper. And I instantly felt like someone placed a medicine ball in my hands. But it wasn't like super heavy, but it was like there was this energy inside my hands. And I could not push them together.
Like the space in between your hands.
There was this ball of energy.
Wow.
Or light, or something was there. I can't feel it right now, but 100% was there. And as like there was a little bit of weight to it, I would go from overhead to just holding it in front of me, like bringing my hands back. And I just felt like, I don't know, this is my medicine ball, like my goodness, my stuff inside there, like the golden water, the flame, the light, and the heart of gold. And I'm holding it there. And what's so crazy is I know I sound nuts, but I try to push to the right of that ball, and my left hand goes out to the left. I try to push to the right with my left hand, and my right hand pops out to the right. Like there's something physically there. Yeah. That I don't just sense, I know is there. And I keep breathing, and I'm listening to the coaching. But anyways, one of the facilitators comes and grabs my hands again, and they're out, but they like fold them over each other while they're out from my chest. And in my mind's eye, or my mind, I just see as they start to place my hands on my heart, like I feel this like melting into my chest.
Like you were bringing the light into your body.
The light, the water, the light and the flame and the especially the gold. Like why I say especially the gold was because it was so warm. Whenever my hands sunk on my chest, it literally felt like I had this warm liquid honey in my chest, like surrounding my heart and starting to kind of like just, I don't know, flow over my lungs or fill them. And I started to cry. And like not a cry, like a sob, but like tears fell down my eyes. And I started to reflect and just like, wow, that's where I was 6 months ago. And this is where I am now. And I finally am accepting self-love, and that's here to stay. And this is my medicine of like needing self-love and to feel loved. And that was my intention, loved. And then water, and then it comes, and then fire and light and gold and things that like I couldn't just make up. Like it happened. I saw it and I felt it. And like I realized I've always denied myself love, but I've been so free to give it away. And like I need to freely accept it now, and let it remain and let it stay and be connected to source, whatever your source is, but my source, God and light and love, and just not be this small cup or even reservoir that can be emptied, which I know we can always be empty, but if we're connected to the source, it's more like this flow through us, almost like a river. Right. So let's be rivers, not reservoirs. And that for me was like, let this light stay, let this love stay, have this fire inside of you that's burning in your bones and your heart, and maintain a heart of gold and like protect it from that darkness. And, so it was so powerful for me. And then that night, I think it was that night, it might've been the next night, there was the talent show, and I didn't even know there was a talent show. And I brought skates and a Viking helmet and like this Star Commander's tunic thing. And I never shared my story of suicide with anyone besides my 5 board members, 2 of my best friends and my mom and the counselor at therapy. And all of a sudden there's 171 people there. And I get the opportunity to MC for Aubrey. That's another story, but I just felt like it'd be a blessing to take this over for him, even though I'm the new guy that no one knows really yet. But if I could bring the energy and let him sit with his wife, that might be a blessing for him, because he was going to perform a poem. But during it, we were having fun, we were laughing, there was poems, there was comedy, there was singing, there was dancing. And then just in a moment, I just said, how incredible is this that we get to be here right now? Of all the moments in time, we're here right here and now. And I just have to share with you all that 6 months ago, I was in the darkest place of my life. I tried to take my life and end it. And some reason I'm still here. And like 6 months later, I'm in the best place I've ever been. Doing some of the deepest work I've ever done with some of the most incredible people that I think walk the face of the earth. And I get invited into this tribe and in this community, and I get fully accepted and seen and heard and allowed space to be me. Even if we go back to the costume party, like that was big for me to wear like size 14 men's skates.
That was pretty awesomely ridiculous.
It was ridiculous for sure.
Unapologetically awesome.
Yeah. I also started a bromper trend kind of, and at least assisted in that.
Yeah, it's cool to see you like stepping out and even the idea of costume. I'm thinking of going back to your bullying experience, like for now, for you to step out and be actually the first one to dress up in a ridiculous way in a group like this as an adult just shows how much you've healed. And I got to witness that too with some of the other members of the community, just your unabashed, growing love for yourself in a way that's like, I can wear this. I can rock these like literally holographic silver size 14 roller skates. You're like trying to roller skate around the lawn in Aubrey's backyard, and you're wearing this like latex, like rubber Viking helmet and just like smiling. And the beauty of that, it invites playfulness in other people. And it's, we're so armored. And I think that this is one thing that I love about you is like you just give people permission to relax and, be playful. And it's just who you are. And it's really inspiring. And I'm grateful.
Thank you.
To know you for sure.
I was blown away. I'm so grateful to know you. I really am. You're one of the best people I know. And you've given me some of the greatest gifts. So thank you. And I mean that. But one of the moments, like, I don't know why I shared that in the talent show of all, like I'm making jokes and I'm having fun but I'm appreciating everyone's gifts and talents. But like all of a sudden just hit me like, oh, I'm still here. I would have wasted this.
Yeah.
I would have not had this. I would have done the most selfish act I could have ever done. Even though I try to be a selfless person, I would have done the most selfish act, hurt so many people, and missed out on finally knowing what it means to love myself. And when I looked out, I saw people tearing up, wiping tears. And the rest of the trip, I had people coming up to me every day talking about the talent show. And I was just like, and I wouldn't have even had that moment if I didn't have Claire tell me, go ask Aubrey if you can MC. And I'm like, what? You go ask Aubrey if I can MC. She's like, no, like it would be good for you to do this, I think.
I think what's so important about what you're saying is that we stop ourselves from doing things because we're worried about how it might appear. And what you did in leaning in and being brave and sharing your story ended up freeing so many other people. And that's really, really powerful for anyone listening, I think, to underscore. It's like, whatever you have, trust that it is enough and that we need everybody being their best selves, even if that's a super vulnerable self. I mean, that gives people absolute permission. And the moment that you're describing of like, I'm still here, I actually had that this morning. As we were sitting here saying intentions, saying prayers for what we hoped for this podcast and this sharing and how we want it to be of service for people, I was just overcome with gratitude of this life, this space. We're in this like really cool hotel room right now, and just the freedom to travel and we just had another really powerful podcast come out with Jenica Torres, and the messages are still flooding in from people who have been touched by that story. It makes me choke up to talk about, but I was sitting here thinking how cool it is that I get to help hold space for you to tell your story and people's stories and how much it's affecting people. And moments I had in the not so distant past where I also didn't think I could do it. And the gratitude of I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm here to live another moment and to share. It's it's humbling, sobering, and I think you and I can agree that for anyone listening to this who's, last night actually I played a video for you of one of, I don't think I've maybe shared that video with one or two other people in my life, but it was a day that I was pretty rock bottom for me. And you watched it with me. I'm crying, and it was a desperate selfie video I made on my computer after a day of calling everybody I knew. I hadn't left my apartment in over a day. I had been crying on the floor. I was being eaten alive by the deepest loneliness I'd ever felt. I felt completely purposeless, useless, like I had nothing to offer in the world. I think I felt like a waste of space. I felt that crippling shame that you were talking about as you stood in the ocean. It really was like the world would be better off without me. And then on top of that, I had people telling me things like, well, Hallie, you're so beautiful. You're so smart. You're so talented. What more could you want? You have so much to be grateful for. And although that's well-intentioned, you know, when someone's at the bottom and you're telling them all the things that they should be grateful for and they don't feel it,
Yeah.
it compounds it. And then you not only have the shame, but you have the guilt of not being grateful for all that you should be grateful for. And it's like that second arrow, and it's unbearable. And I say in that video, I don't think anybody's as worried about me as I am about me. Like, I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And, you know, I shared this too in the video, which, you know, maybe someday I'll share with the world. But I talk about the night before just getting obliterated drunk, just drinking 7 glasses of wine, basically becoming blackout. In the video, I hold up my arms and I say I have bruises on me that I don't remember where they came from last night. I'm lucky I woke up in my bed. And then you asked me when that video was. You're like, when was this? I was like, that was at the end of 2017. And it wasn't much later that I've dipped in and out of depression as well. And just like you, the thing that brought me out was community. And I was at another kind of rock bottom moment in December of 2018. And that's when I decided to apply for Aubrey's Fit for Service program. And clearly since then, my life is on a completely different trajectory. But all this is to say, everything you're talking about of that moment of we wake up inside of ourselves to recognize we are still alive. And to tell people listening that you can do that in any moment, wherever you are right now, sitting in your car, walking around your house, doing things like slow it down. Like, look at your fingers, feel your breath, you know, feel the miracle of, I don't know what you've got going on today, but like you're doing things and you're on this planet that's like spiraling around in the abyss, circling around this giant rock we call the sun, and everything is aligned for us to have enough oxygen on this planet and for your body to heal itself and keep you alive. Like, what is there to worry about? Yeah. You know?
We're walking miracles.
We are.
This planet's a miracle, everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I appreciate about you so much is how thoughtful you are, but how your presence allows people to be their true self, or at least lean into that and start to find that and discover that. One of the things I feel like I was able to do in this podcast with you right now was bring some of the things I've kept in the dark to light. You shared that video with me, and me seeing that how much progress, like that, you are not the same woman at all that you were in 2017 at all. Like, you were completely different. You look different. Mm-hmm. Like the darkness that you were living in then and the light that you're living in now, and the glow that you have, and the love you have in your eyes, and depth in your voice, and just everything that shines through you is so different than that video that I'm like, wow, where will I be in 3 years? And just even looking back at my own life and where I've come from in the last 6 months. But then I look at Jenica, and for people who haven't listened to that episode, please, please, please do yourself a favor and go listen, because that was her first time sharing her story, and her bringing that darkness into the light of that trauma from a family member, or at least a step-grandfather, and all the craziness that happened. I think when we leave stuff in the dark, I think of like fungus and how fungus thrives in the dark, and bacteria and different things, like they thrive in the dark. But truly, they barely survive in the light. And so Jenica sharing her story had you and me previewing it in Sedona in tears. It was so powerful. I knew there was going to be an incredible response from anyone that listened to that. And that happened. And then you sharing that with me last night blew me away, that was you. The Hallie Rose I know, that was you. You came from there, that low, that darkness, that depth of like despair, to where you are now. It gave me courage and strength to share that darkness that I thought I would. I'm the founder of a nonprofit now. I've got to be careful with what I share. But I think or hope and pray that if this helps just one person decide not to do what I tried to do, and know that there's hope, and know that in 6 months from now, they can be in the best place they've ever been, or in 3 years, they can be a completely transformed human being that doesn't even recognize themselves looking in the mirror, then it's worth me sharing my junk. And this life's incredible. I'm here to stay. And that's the thing I get out with you. That's what I got in Sedona, was I'm here to stay. And that was the first time I could actually say that.
Can you talk briefly about Fight for the Forgotten, your nonprofit? I can't even believe we've gone this long without just diving into it. And,
Sure.
and you can go into as little or as much detail as you want, but the bullying side of it, and then what you did with the Pygmies, and maybe a little bit about the Congo.
Sure. Congo and Uganda, we expanded there, and we're so pumped about it. And you can give me a 5-minute hand or a 10-minute or a 2-minute. And
we got all day.
Okay, great. Well, Fight for the Forgotten started in 2011, or at least that was kind of the birthplace of it. And as an initiative in my personal life mission. And I don't know if I have time for the vision story there with the Pygmies. But
you want to go maybe
briefly. Okay. So I was 11 months sober and 11 months into kind of my faith, but I just started speaking. I just met Matt, who I met at rehab this last few months. And I was helping anywhere and everywhere. Like I said, the Children's Hospital, the Rescue Mission, the at-risk youth group, all these places, and juvenile detention centers, prisons, death row, place I never thought I would go. But I didn't have like anything in my crosshairs or my sights set on a target. And I just felt like I was kind of aimlessly going. And I just wanted more of a purpose. I'd stopped fighting because win or lose, I had an excuse to use. Win or lose, I'm going to use. And so I stepped away.
Either celebrating or covering up.
Yep. Either numbing, which I've only lost twice, but those were the ones I really used, scarily, or however you'd say that. But when to celebrate, or just it didn't fulfill me, so to escape and numb and sedate and isolate and all that. But 11 months in, I just find myself at this place where I'm like, needing purpose, needing meaning, needing something like a mission, or just a knowing that like I'm headed in the right direction. So I say a prayer. Saw the prayer work once with Jack Murphy, and it lead to incredible things. So I decided to say a prayer, and I said, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And I meant it. And I wanted to hear. And I'd just been talking with a friend that sometimes we ask in prayer and we just look for what we're wanting to hear. So we ask, and then we're only listening for what we want to hear. So ask and then listen. Listen and just like open-handedly listen. So I did that, and then it was obey. That's the hard part. Ask, listen, and then when you're told something, like go for it.
Right.
But that can be really difficult. And then experience. You'll experience a life that only like few people live. That ask the God of the universe, the one that holds the stars in place, like what you're supposed to do with your life. So as I was looking for that guidance, I said a prayer, God, what do you want to do with my life? And boom, I was taken in a vision. I've only had this twice. I've already shared one. And this first one, though, blew me away because I was in a rainforest walking down a footpath with thickets and vines and moving them out of the way. I'm on a footpath barely big enough for my feet. And I'm walking and I hear drumming. And I get closer and I hear singing. I get closer and I come into a clearing. And as I come into the clearing, I see this person that's sick. And his ribs are poking out. And I know he's hungry and he's coughing. So I knew he was sick. And there's these twig and leaf huts. And there's this tribe, there's this village. And I don't know anything about them, but I just was floored with the knowledge, or filled with the knowledge, that they were hungry, poor, sick, thirsty, oppressed, and enslaved. I knew they called someone master, that they were enslaved. And I felt that they were forgotten. That was the biggest thing I got out of the vision. Was that they were the forgotten people, or that they felt forgotten. I came out of that and I cried a little, would you call it a little bitty puddle, grandma-sized cookie puddle of tears. And I never cried like that in my life. Never cried like that. Up until that point, I never really cried.
This was like the first kind of cry like that you had.
Yes. And it did a shift in me.
Now you're like, whatever, man.
Yeah, whatever. I'll cry from time to time, whenever I need to. And so I cried, and I had no idea who they were, no idea where they were. And I did feel crazy. Like, did I have some sort of psychotic episode or break, or this wasn't a hallucinogen or a psychedelic.
Just this was organic experience.
Yeah, completely sober, a sober spiritual experience. And who could I ever tell this to? Because I'm going to sound crazy. Right. And then I started trying to break it down and rationalize it. And I was like, wait, people in the rainforest in the Amazon, they're not dark skinned, like black at least. And, and people in India or Thailand, you know, like I was thinking like, we're a rainforest and these people aren't there. Right. I thought of the desert and the savanna type stuff in Africa. Anyways, 3 days later, I tell a guy named Caleb. Caleb had helped Bear Grylls with some survival training in Scotland, and he had wrote a book, and Bear Grylls wrote the forward for it. And anyways, I meet this guy. He's a wild dude. He's a humanitarian missionary guy that goes around the world, that lived with the Vanuatu, in Vanuatu with this tribe that created bungee jumping, and they jump off these platforms and hit their heads on the ground to get their yam harvest blessed. If they don't hit their head, they're cowards. And if they hit their head and they die, they're cursed. And if they hit their head and they live, their land and families will be blessed. And it's like, that's insane. And he lived with the Maasai people, the people that hunt lions with spears. And I'm like, whoa, this guy's nuts. I just met him. Maybe I'll tell him. And I finally decided. Yeah. So I tell him. Right. And he gets a smile on his face. And I'm like, what? And he says, I know who they are.
Whoa.
And I go, what?
Yeah.
He goes, they're the Mbuti Pygmies. And I said, who? And he said, they're in the Congo basin rainforest, Uganda, Rwanda, Congo, some other countries. But if there's anyone that's forgotten, it's them. And they suffer with everything you just told me: hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, and enslaved. And I go, okay. And he goes, crazy enough, my wife asked me, I think it was that day, it might have been the day before, but to cancel his trip to Congo to meet them in 3.5 weeks from my vision. And he said that he's a husband, a father, has a newborn, and the team that he was leading all canceled their trips. And he was the last one with the plane ticket. And said that his wife said, if you're going to go, you need a sign because you have a newborn baby and you have a family, and the rebels just took over the airport, and they're beheading people. They're killing and cooking the pygmy people, eating them, like crazy stuff. So anyways, to fast forward, I rush I rush a passport, get a ticket, all this stuff. 3.5 weeks later, Caleb, Colin, and I go to the rainforest, and we take like 6 or 7 planes, and we go to we go to the Congo, and 100% of the vision comes true. I'm walking on a footpath down the forest, all this stuff, and meet these people. And Caleb and Colin grab me and say, "This is your vision. Thickets out of the way." First person we meet has tuberculosis, and it was just wild that I met the people from the vision. And anyways, to sum it up, like what we've done from that vision, held a young boy that died of dirty water, and just some wild things have happened where I didn't know about the water crisis. I didn't know about slavery. I didn't know about so much oppression of people being hated. And we think we see hate or division here in the United States, but it's a different level there whenever people don't think of someone as fully human. And so anyways, I was there on the last day of the trip, and I told Caleb and Colin, I'm overwhelmed with this oppression, and what am I supposed to do about it? This problem's so big, I'm so small. What am I supposed to do? Look, you had a vision. If God gave you vision, there's going to be something amazing that happens here. And I'm like, I just feel like if I tried my whole life to help, it'd be like emptying the ocean with an eyedropper.
Right.
I don't want to waste my life trying to help and not be able to, like, make a meaningful difference. So anyways, I said I needed one more sign, and they go, "You're crazy. You just had a vision come true."
You need a lot of signs, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I literally went to a knee. I went down into a full squat like a catcher, hands on my cheeks, watching this vision happen.
Wow.
That was my vision, that they're grabbing me saying, "This is the vision you told us about."
Twilight Zone moment.
Literally, like I didn't understand what happened. Mm-hmm. I'd been there before.
Right.
And so I tell them that, and they're like, "You're crazy. Like, you got the vision. What else do you need?" And I don't know, just something. If I'm going to dedicate my life to this, I just need something to hold on to that I can't deny. And the chief pulls us to the side that day, our last day, and says, "Look," and he's looking at Caleb, Colin, and me, and says, but he looks directly at me and says, "Everyone else calls us the forest people, but we call ourselves the forgotten." And when he said forgotten, I instantly start to kind of tear up.
Whoa.
Because Caleb and Colin both look at me right then. They put their hands on my shoulder, and he says, "Forgotten." He goes, "Look, we don't have a voice. Can you," and he motions to me, not a point, but like all his fingers, like, "Can you help us have one?" And I had like deeply connected with him on a different level than Caleb and Colin, not like a better level, just different. And I was called there, and they were there like supporting that for me. Mm-hmm. And when he said, "Can you help us have a voice?" We don't have one. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow. Because I had told Caleb and Colin, I can't help them with water. I can't help them with land. I can't help them with food. Like, what can I help them with? And when he said, "Help us have a voice," I was like, oh, that is something I can help with. So I instantly said yes. Like, and I said it like yes, but screamed it in my soul or spirit, and came back and went back for another month, and then went back for a year, and then have been going back ever since, and go back every year, spend weeks or months at a time there. And we've seen over 60,000 people get clean water, 4 sustainable farms. They're farming for themselves and feeding themselves first, and then feeding the markets and making money for the first time, and sending their kids to school. And it's pretty amazing. And in Uganda now, we're expanding there for the Mbuti Pygmies, who were kicked out of the Simaliki National Forest, which is cool in Congo is we buy rainforest and put it in their name. And it's the strongest thing in Congolese courts, being in the name of the tribe.
Wow.
Which are finally starting to be recognized as a tribe. And then in Uganda, though, they were kicked out of the rainforest to protect the rainforest and to protect the wildlife, but they're the protectors of the forest, and they don't take anything more than they need. And but for tourism, they kicked them out and put them on 1 acre of land, over 300 people. The Mbuti tribe's really small. In Congo, there's 400 to 600,000, but in Bundabujo, where we go, there's only 300, or were 300. They put them on 1 acre of land behind a slum. They throw out their sewage, and it rolls through their land, and they're trying to cook, and They have to move their fire because raw sewage is about to run around it. The kids are playing on the land that it dried the day before, and it's sewage. And there's all these mounds. And I asked King Zito, or the chief. I said, Zito, what are these mounds that I'm stepping on? And I had a gut feeling, but I was like, there's no way, not possible. And he said, they call me the Big Pygmy there. That's my name. And so in Congo, it's Efeosa Mbuti Mangbo. And you got to say it like that. But
say it again.
Efeosa Mbuti Mangbo. And so Efeosa means the man who loves us. And I love that one the most, obviously. And Mbuti Mangbo means the Big Pygmy. So their average height's only 4'7". So we're complete polar opposites, right? Like they're darker skin, no arm hair, no facial hair. Like viral videos have gone off of them seeing themselves in my iPhone for the first time, or them feeling my beard and my arm. You know, they don't. If they're lucky,
don't really know what they look like.
Yeah, if they're lucky, they have a broken piece of a rusty mirror.
Can you imagine how different that is from the vanity that we see?
They don't care what they look like, men and women. I mean, they want to be presentable.
Right, of course.
Their clothes are nice, and when they can have it. And but who would have known, like, giving them a portrait of a family picture would be the best thing they ever got. But
so you ask about the mounds.
I ask about the mounds, and Zito's head sinks, and he goes, you know, Big Pygmy, they don't give us anywhere to bury our dead. And so we live on our graveyard or cemetery. This is our ancestors. These are our kids. These are our wives and our husbands. So over 300 people were moved onto 1 acre of land behind a slum and a club, and they're trafficked and sexually, and they're thought to be a cure for HIV. And so like 3/4 of them of 152 people left have HIV. And I met little Z, and he was held down, and he's got scars on his ribs and on his inner biceps because people were cutting him with razors and using his blood with the witch doctors. I think it cures them of HIV. Well, it gave him HIV.
So they believe that the blood of the pygmy people.
Yeah, because they lived in the forest. They eat the natural medicines and herbs and roots and fruits, and they think of them as medicine people. So if they can have sex with them, if they can collect their blood, or sometimes even if they can cannibalize them, the rebel groups believe if you eat a pygmy, their flesh, before you go into war, you become invincible, like bullets fly right through you. And so, which sounds insane. It is insane. But somehow they believe it through witch doctors and different things like that. So, we've been able to shift them off that land. And in July, what's going to be so amazing is, you know, it's not 3,000 acres like in Congo, but it's 48 acres.
Wow.
And
so from 1 acre to 48 acres. Wow.
And we have 3 farms going right now, and we're about to start the construction of 35 homes for the 35 families.
Wow.
And they're going from little huts to on their cemetery with no clean water till we just drilled our 3rd well on the land. Completed it, I think, yesterday or the day before.
That's amazing.
They will have 2-bedroom homes with living room, dining room, kitchens, patios on the front and back, potentially French drains because it rains a lot in the region, but we're making sure they're not on a floodplain like a lot of places in Bundabugio are. And we're building a soccer pitch or a football pitch and soccer field, and it's going to be so healing for the community. We're working with the community leaders and the government officials to say, what if on the Batwa Pygmy land, what if we hosted the district games where, you know, these people that used to oppress them and them being oppressed, and like, but all the tribes invited, and we have an actual official field and like a good viewing, with bleachers and everything else. So they're going to be hosting the games, hopefully. Like the officials we're building it. So And that's something that brings people together is sport. It doesn't, in martial arts, what I love is it doesn't matter what color, creed, religion, country you're from. It's like, you're a martial artist, I'm a martial artist. You're my brother, I'm your brother.
Right.
I mean, one of the guys that sent me to Congo on that trip after the vision was a guy I knocked out. I knocked him out. He paid for my flight to Congo. How
Perfect.
crazy is that, right? Like
Yeah.
there's this brotherhood that formed. So we want them to feel that on the soccer field.
I want to interject here because what you're doing is so big. Sometimes maybe you felt like the whole eyedropper in the ocean thing, but you told me a story about a little boy. Actually, you told me about a couple things. One is the markets, and this idea of the pygmies and their food, and then showing up at these markets, and now they're a part of the commerce in their local area, and then this is making them be viewed different socially. And you told this beautiful little story about this little boy you have a relationship with, Jippy. And I'd love you to tell the story. And you said that you were visiting him over different trips, and you were looking for him this one day. And you know the story I'm talking about. But I just thought that was so beautiful because the ripple effects as far as the social system and dismantling the separation in the class system that's there from what you're doing is directly changing how these future generations of pygmy children will be able to live a life. Yeah. So I'd love for you to talk about Jippy.
Well, I'll talk about Jippy real quick. Our mission and vision is to defeat hate with love. That's our vision, is to defeat hate with love. And our mission is to knock out bullying worldwide. But really it's to defend the weak, love the unloved, empower the voiceless. But this isn't just a Justin thing. It's so much more than that. One, we've had thousands of donors from all 50 states and 59 countries. But also it's the boots on the ground, the Congolese, the Ugandan champions that are their own countrymen transforming their country from the inside out. And so we just get to support them because we say opportunity is greater than charity. Charity can be great, but opportunity is always better. So we partner with the locals so that they're equipped with the tools, educated with the knowledge, and empowered to do it for themselves. Because it can't be me coming in there and doing it, because if I'm not there, then it doesn't work. They have to be empowered. They have to be equipped, trained, and sent out to be the heroes or to be the change that they want to see in their own country. So I've seen that. And it's been incredible to have a team of Ugandans and Congolese that are just rocking it, rocking it. Community development specialists that didn't have an opportunity, that were selling meat in the market or selling SIM cards. And they had a degree in community development, but they couldn't get a job for it. It's crazy. So being able to give those jobs has been awesome. With Jippy, one of the things his grandfather, who's the chief, one of the things that sickened me was that I got invited to a church to speak, to share my story of why I'm there, and also just stuff. They weren't allowed in because they were pygmies. I was like, well, then I'm not coming in. And the pygmy people were like watching through the windows. And then they allowed the chief and the elders to sit in the back. And then I'm outside and I'm like watching this, and I'm like, so I walk in and I grab the chief and his wife and Jippy, and I bring them with me because they have an honored spot for me to sit at the front. I'm like, I'm not doing this unless they're by my side, And so it was cool because it brought them together. And then I told them, if you guys want to have a church, like, you don't need a building. Like, you say God gave you the forest, like just celebrate and do your thing and worship or whatever you're called to do. Do it right here in the forest that God gave you, that you love and cherish, and that he gave you back. This is your land now. So anyways, like, there's been so much crazy stuff, but they weren't even allowed in school. Like, one, the excuse was you don't have school uniforms. You can't keep them clean either. The other was you can't pay for school fees. There are no public schools in Congo. So once they were able to start making money for themselves, and once they started going to the market and having the best corn, because they have an agriculturalist teaching them how to farm, plant your seeds a little farther apart, plant them a little deeper, and then when the rains come, they're going to produce, and they're not going to choke each other out. And so then that was amazing. And then also they can't even get their bananas to the market because people buy them on the roads before they ever get there. So pretty amazing. But from that, they're able to send their kids to school for the first time because it took their excuses away. And also, like, we helped the slave master side get clean water too. Because if you're just loving one side and hating the other, it's going to harm the people you're originally there to love.
Right.
So we want to love both sides equally and come together as a community and say, what's the best solution for everyone here? And so that was, I've attended 5, I think, funerals of the slave master kids. I mean, it's hard to attend any funeral there because of the way they weep and mourn and grieve.
Yeah, but can you talk about that a little bit too?
For children, they say it takes a village to raise a child, but they also say it takes a village to bury that child. And whenever I buried Andy Bo, that was my second trip, and I'd only been there for a second month. And
how old was Andy Bo?
1.5. 1.5 years old. I loved that little dude and his mom. And I just loved their village. And I didn't have a deep relationship with them, but, I cared about them. And it just wrecked me because this is the first time I've seen this stuff. And, but I knew his mom's husband had died of dirty water. And Andy Bo's dad. And I knew his other brother had died of dirty water. So now I'm cupping the back of his head and I'm holding his little hand. And she's cupping the back of my hand under his head and holding his other hand. And we're sitting across from each other. And Andy Bo, I don't even think I noticed that he took his last breath. He just stopped breathing and blood came out of his ears and onto my hands.
While you were holding him? And his mom was there?
Yeah. And she was in shock because she was starving. You could count every rib in her sternum. Like she was sitting there topless. So you could see every rib head or whatever you call it connecting to her sternum all the way down and her ribs on her side. And she literally looked the closest thing to a skeleton with skin on that I've ever seen. A slave who can't work because she's sick, so she doesn't get fed. And trying to take care of her son. She had walked Andy Bo to the hospital, or not hospital, but the little mud hut clinic where they have a nurse and maybe a doctor. And the first time she took him to the clinic, they said, "You're too dirty to come in here." And so they turned her away. And the second time, she said, "Can you give me some medicine from the outside?" And they said, "No, you don't have any money." And so she came back. She told the village, the chief said, "We'll rally people to try to get money." But literally, they've never been paid money. So they're begging, and they come up with about $3.50 of Congolese franc. And this is 115 people, 100 people. Normally, the Pygmies live in these little villages of 85 to 115. So that's the range. And so 85 to 115 people beg and come up with $3.50 of Congolese franc. They collect about 2 dozen eggs, a chicken, a bag of charcoal, and firewood. They take that to the clinic, and the pills that would have saved Andy Bo's life was $1. But he was too far gone from that, so it was a one-shot cure, and it was $3 of Congolese franc. They have more than enough, $3.50 and all the resources. And then they tell them the real reason, the chief and his mom, "We won't waste our medicine on a pygmy animal," and turn them away to die. That was really hard for me to hear. And knowing that the slave master could have helped and he's watching me dig the grave. I never looked through a guy so much, like across the cage, wanting to fight someone, but looking across at that man while I'm got blisters on my hands from digging Andy Bo's grave, and it's not his fault, but like he could have helped and he chose not to. I remember asking him, and I said, why don't you pay them money? And he goes, do you pay your animals or do you feed your animals? And then I said, why'd you let them die? Why didn't you like pay for medicine? And he said it was cheaper to let them die. And so that kind of heaviness and darkness is like really hard not to want to, one, beat them, and two, like have to dig deep and say, I'm going to choose to love this guy anyways. Like, because if I don't, it's going to cause problems. And I don't want it to hurt those people I love. So helping that village get clean water, both sides, was like something else. It was victory over darkness. It was victory over death. It was victory over, slavery. And so to even see it advance enough to where they're free on their own land, the slave masters getting clean water for the first time, their wives being able to go to work because they don't have to go collect water, or their kids being able to go to school because they don't have to go collect water, and them being able to stay at school or stay at work because they're not drinking dirty water that's going to make them sick and take them out of there, or being able to show them in that local part of Africa or that region, they spend about $160 a year on medicine for waterborne disease. Now, for a country of 74 million people that make about $1 to $1.25 per day, you're spending $160. You're spending half your paycheck almost, half of your yearly income on medicine just to keep you alive and to keep your kids in school or life at work. Being able to say, like, look how much this is going to change your life. You're going to be able to keep half of your paycheck. You're going to be able to go to school. You're going to be able to go to work. Like, you're going to have 2 incomes instead of 1 now.
Yeah.
It changed everything for them. So they loved working with our group and our people who really are thoughtful, saying, this isn't a cookie cutter solution. It's not a blue, it's not a cookie cutter solution. Every community is unique. And so we're going to treat it as such, and we're going to talk with you, communicate, and have you be part of every step of the way.
Right.
And then, seeing Jippy last time,
so let's go back to Jippy.
I'm leaving, and I hug everyone in the village, and that normally takes a little while. And I was with you in Sedona, and when we would leave places, especially you, and how beloved you are, like, it takes a while to leave because people are coming and hugging and telling you how much they care about you.
You got to say really good goodbyes.
Really good goodbyes.
Yeah.
And, or see you soon. See you later. And I just always see Jippy. And I didn't see him this time, and I was bummed. And they're like, I'm like waiting for him. They're like, it's okay, he's not here, just get on the road. Maybe he'll come see you at your truck, because I got to hike out of the village to the road. So I hike out of the village to the road. Jippy's not there. I'm like, I didn't see him on the way. I kind of hang out. I'm packing slow. I'm thinking, do I go back in there? Do I go? And so luckily my translator and good friend, and he's like, we'll just go. I think he knew what was up. So we start driving on the road, and all of a sudden I see in the schoolhouse where only the Makapala, the non-Pygmies, the former slave master tribe, only their kids have ever gone to that school. All of a sudden I see a little crisp white shirt and these bright blue shorts and this barefooted, cute little kiddo just sprinting out of the school building during the school hour, just sprinting because he sees our fight for the forgotten truck. He's running to the roadside, and I see that it's Jippy. He's going to be chief one day. And his father's dead, but his grandfather's chief. And, him being, if he's the first educated Pygmy to graduate, like, he'd be able to even represent him on the governmental level. Like, that would be wild. They have no representation, zero.
Wow.
And so he ran out to the road. I jump out of the truck, and he just like, he's such an athlete. He can climb 100, 200 foot tall tree without any rope or anything. He just jumps and like literally hits my chest. And I just hugged him, told him I love him, so proud of him. And that he's going to be the leader one day. He's going to be chief one day. And I don't know, just moments like that I'll never forget and I'll always cherish, and they matter. Yeah.
I'm thinking of, it's kind of this new running joke about you, but you're such this gentle giant, right? And we were calling you the hug shaman in Sedona because, when you give hugs, and I'm thinking of you hugging Jippy, you just have this way of making people feel safe. And you told me another story. I believe is this Jippy's grandfather who gave you the bow? Or is this another?
This is another chief.
This is another chief.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was Jalawa.
Jalawa, the chief Jalawa gave you a gift, and you told me a super powerful story about this.
I haven't thought of that in so long.
And it's a great segue into it.
Okay. Well, so I was given in the first village with the first water and the first land. Jalawa gave me his bow and arrows. Well, his bow has all these notches on it, like a notch on a belt, or I guess a tally mark, right? And it was to count the kills of the animals. So there's certain types of notches, like artistic looking triangles, and
so he's
V's.
Etched all of this into his
bow
to keep track of all of his kills.
Yeah, from like maybe decades, or at least a decade, and from antelope to wild hog to monkey to other animals like birds, like parrots and things like that. They literally eat African gray parrots, which are like thousands of dollars here, and they're just everywhere there, and snacks. So, I mean, it's food, and
right.
They only take what they need. They're not poaching anything, but there's plenty of them there, and so he gives me that, and I treasure it. I got emotional because he said, this is what I use to provide for my family. And this is my grandfather's land, and I hunted here as a child. And now my grandchildren are going to be able to say this was my grandfather's land.
So we're back. And now we're recording from my car because, I had a feeling this would happen with you because you're such a good storyteller. And I knew this podcast was going to be big. There was so much to talk about. And in the middle of us recording, the housekeeper came in, the cleaning lady knocked on the hotel room, and we realized we had overstayed our late checkout time. So I was like, we have to go finish the story. The people need to hear it. So we're literally inside of my little car right now with boxes and suitcases and all of my stuff because I met you mid-trip on my way moving to Austin. And I just love this whole podcast. Like, this is just so perfect. And
it's the Hallie Rose Car Confessionals.
Ooh, I like that. So what an intimate way to end this interview, sitting in my car with you. So I would love to jump back into the story about the bow. Yeah,
I can do that easily. The bow was really meaningful to me. It was the first gift the Pygmy people ever gave me. It was Jalawa's bow, and he had put notches there for every animal. Antelope, parrots, all those things. And so wild hogs. Anyways, he gave it to me because I was able to provide, not me, but our team, and Fight for the Forgotten. We're able to provide for his family clean water, and land, and a farming initiative. And that was things they never had. They just hunted and gathered, and then they were enslaved. And so
he wanted to give you this gift that was very sacred.
Very sacred, because it's what he provided for his family.
Right.
And that we provided for his family. And so it was sacred, and I loved it. It was such an honor, and I took pride in that. Like, I was coming back from that trip and went to Komanda town, and it's in the rainforest, but it's kind of this crossroads of where you're going to go north, south, or east or west, and it's just really war torn. One time I stayed there, the hotel I was in had 8 bullet holes in it. The sun coming through in the morning, I was just like, this is surreal. So I'm walking around there, and there's a corrupt governmental official, or actually a soldier, but he's a higher up soldier. And anyways, I'm just walking through the town, and I have the bow because I wasn't going to leave the bow and the arrows in my car if someone wanted to break in and get that. Like, that was the most valuable possession I had. So the soldier reaches out and I don't even see him, but all of a sudden I feel a tug, a real hard pull on the bows and arrows. And I just clench my fist all of a sudden because I'm not going to let it go. And I look and here's a soldier and he's in camo. He's got, I think, an AK-47 wrapped around his chest. And he's pulling it saying that it's his, give it to him. And I said, no, it's mine. And he goes, where did you get this? And I said it was a gift. And he goes, this wouldn't have been a gift. This is how the Pygmies provide for themselves. And I'm like, you're right. But he goes, it's, give it to me. And I go, I'm not giving it to you as a gift from my grandfather who adopted me in. Like, this is my tribe and this was a gift and it's mine. And I just remember him looking at me and I knew he was corrupt. I knew he wanted a bribe. I knew he was going to steal that from me if I didn't pay him something. And he said, you're going to pay me. You're going to give me something. And I go, oh, and he goes, you're going to pay a tax. And I go, a tax? You mean a bribe? Mm. And he goes, not a bribe, a tax. If these are artifacts from the rainforest and from the Pygmy people. It's artifacts. Like, you cannot take this from our country without paying a tax. And I said, I'm not paying a bribe. And I remember him saying that you're not leaving here unless you give me something. You're giving me something. And whenever he said something, you know, my defenses are up. I am a fighter, so that fight or flight, I wasn't going to fight.
Adrenaline, he's got a gun.
He's got a gun. I'm sitting there looking at him, and he's staring me down. I'm staring him down, and he goes, you're going to give me something. Something in me just clicked.
Didn't you say you prayed too?
I was kind of praying, in my head, where I was like, God help me. Like, give me something, show me something. Like, how do I calm this situation down?
De-escalate.
Like, de-escalate, because I don't want to, I'm not going to get in a fight with this guy. I'm not going to go to prison here, which their prisons there are like dungeons. You don't get fed unless someone on the outside feeds you and you have no clean water. So I'm like thinking all that through, like, I'm not going there, but I'm not giving them this. I'm just not. And so I'm actually literally praying. That's
terrifying.
Yeah, kind of. And it was, but I was just thinking, like, help me, God, like, do something. And so he says, you're going to give me something. And I go, oh, I'm going to give you something like that? And he goes, you're going to give me something. You're not leaving here till you do. So I remember just putting my arms out and just wrapping them around him. And literally I hug him and squeeze him, and the gunmetal is in between our chest.
You're like hugging an AK-47 and this man.
And,
wow.
And I kind of let out a laugh, and he's tense. And then all of a sudden I feel him soften, and then he laughs too. And he gives me these 2 pats on my back while I'm, maybe even 3. It was just like pat. And he goes, okay. And I go, you told me I was going to give you something. I'm going to give you a hug, brother. And so we start kind of laughing. And then I go, and I do have something for you. I flash to me having, not my Ultimate Fighter, but my UFC debut card. Tops card, because I'd show some of the Pygmies that and just show them what I do, because I'd ask what my job was. And so I had one of those on me. I might have had a couple, but anyways, I grab that, I give it to him, and then he is like, this is you? Because now I have long hair in the fight. I have short hair and a beard. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And he goes, oh, you're a champion fighter. I'm like, yeah, I'm a national champion in wrestling, and I'm in the UFC and this and that. He doesn't know what that is. But anyways, I tell him that, and he gets all excited. And I remember just that one hug de-escalated everything and shifted the atmosphere, or how we were interacting with one another, which you would just experience on these last couple of days. You saying how, someone, an act of kindness with you when you were not agitated, but just irritated at the pump, and how much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Things were, how it shifted your whole day.
That's a good story,
and little miracles. I want you to tell it. And, but so all of a sudden, he is like, we have a champion, Congo champion boxer and wrestler. Like, you have to come meet him. And I'm like, where? He's like, he's with the unit. He's in the forest. He's with the troops. And I'm like, okay. And so literally all of a sudden I go from this man going to steal from me, asking for a bribe and a tax, to then giving him a hug with the gun in between us, to then him taking us into the forest into where the troops were in these like little grass huts. And they're all drunk, or a lot of them are drunk. They're rough, tumble dudes. A lot of them used to be rebels that might have raped, stole, killed. And then they just switch sides when they run out of resources. And all of a sudden I'm showing, I go in there and I wrestle around with the champion boxer, wrestler guy. And I remember I picked him up, put him over my shoulder, and I'm kind of laughing while he's up there. And he didn't like it at first, but then I just calmed him, I think, by showing him its technique. It's not all strength, and it's not me versus him right now. It's just a fun competition or fun engagement, like this exchange in front of his brothers, his fellow soldiers. So anyways, it turned into hand-to-hand combat or self-defense and some wrestling. And also I'm in the rainforest instructing these guys. And ever since then, when I go back to Comanda, those guys remember, and they let us through all the roadblocks easily. They don't give us trouble. They don't ask for bribes. In fact, oftentimes we have a bag of passion fruit we give them, or a bottle of water, and they know we're there for the right reasons and the right people and to help. And I helped them on that first time. And so I see those guys sometimes, and it's quite funny. It's unique. And just a simple hug. You're going to give me something. Mm-hmm. So I gave him a hug. And
it's brave.
Changed everything.
It's the hug shaman.
The hug shaman. There we go.
Yeah.
How about you share a little about your shift from the gas station?
Yeah. So I've been on this trip across the country as I move from New York to Austin. And I was staying with my friend Claire in Columbus, Ohio for a night, and got really early to hit the road the next day, needed to fill up with gas. Stopped at this gas station right before getting on the highway, and it was pretty like run down. Not the most like updated pumps and stuff like that. And I was having trouble getting my card to work. And I try running it 3 times and it's just not taking it. And I'm flipping the card like, am I doing this the wrong way? And I'm just kind of agitated. We've been in Sedona. I'm like flipping time zones, I've been at East Coast. Now I'm driving back west. It's just like very disoriented, just grumpy overall. And so now it's like see attendant, and I'm just like, and so I go in and I say to I think he's the owner, I just got that sense like this was his store. Mm-hmm. And I was like, my car's not working at the pump. I'm at pump number 4 and I want to fill up, and I'm handing him my card. And he's like, how much do you want to put on? And I was like, I don't know. I want to fill up. Like, I just want to authorize it until it's full. And he's like, so like, you want to put on like 20? And I was like, I don't know how much gas my car is going to need, but I want to fill it up. And, I'm in that energy of stress. And he just looks at me and he goes, hey, relax. Everything's going to be okay. And when I shared this story with you, I originally had this moment. It grounded me into my body. And I thought, am I upset that this stranger is just kind of urging me to quell my emotions, get a hold of myself and relax? Or am I super grateful right now that I got off track, I got lost, and this person is bringing me home? And so I took a deep breath and I was like, okay, just authorize the card for, 30 or 40. And he's like, I'll give you a receipt for whatever. You come back in. And he goes, hey, do you want a coffee or anything? Take whatever you want. And I had the opportunity to feel shame or embarrassment or guilt myself for being such a piece of shit, but that's the humanness, right? And his vibration, his loving kindness, his compassion gave me a portal through which to enter back into my own self-love and into my presence. Yeah. And so I went out, I filled up with gas, I came back, he gave me my receipt. I took some hot water for tea and I thanked him, and I got into my car and I had shifted and I was like, okay, let's choose a different trajectory for this day.
Yeah.
Let's bring in more rapturous presence and awareness. And, I won't tell the whole story, but I ended up bringing that mood with me. And I told you about stopping in St. Louis, following intuition to go into this vegan cafe. And ended up connecting with this barista who was there making my coffee. And because I had been so touched by the morning and really appreciating people who are in all jobs,
right.
Like we all have our medicine and our work that we need to offer. And people we're humans. We're all united in that. And sometimes we forget to acknowledge each other. So I had forgotten that there were other people out there in the morning. It was all about me. It was like, where do I need to go? What am I doing? And I got lost. And so the rest of the day I was like, I'm going to engage. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be open to miracles and good things, because this man in the morning gave me a miracle. So I'm going to keep spreading that. And so with this barista, he's asking me, where are you traveling? And I start telling him all about my travels. He's like, why do you travel so much? I start talking about the podcast. What do you talk about? I tell him some things about the podcast. I talk about ayahuasca, and I talk about, consciousness. And when I said the word ayahuasca, this man just starts like laughing. And I was like, is he laughing at me? Like, does he think I'm nuts? No, that's not the case. He ends up going, I can't believe you're telling me this. I'm an apprentice ayahuasca shaman. Wow. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in this state that even sits with this medicine regularly. And I can't believe you just walked into my coffee shop and that we're talking about this. And long story short, he and I engage in this deep conversation. He's like giving me all these things out of the case. Just, take whatever you want for your journey. And then he said,
this rose?
Yeah, this rose that's on my dashboard, he gave me that. And he ends up inviting me to sit in a mapacho, sacred tobacco ceremony with him. Like, I've just rocked up to this cafe, just trying to get a coffee and refuel.
Following your intuition.
I end up spending 3 hours with this guy after he gets off his shift and with his roommate, just following synchronicity and trusting. And I end up sharing with them my life story. He gifts me this tobacco pipe. We smoke the ceremonial tobacco together. And it was just so pure and deep and beautiful and special. We sat on the back steps of their place and watched the birds dip and dive in between the bushes. And there was a soft rain happening. And, they even offered, they're like, if you need a place to stay. And I was like, my soul's calling me to keep going. But I so appreciate everything that you gave me. And we exchanged some little gifts. I gifted them with some different tobacco. And then they gave me a bunch of water, this rose, and some food for the trip. And I carried on my way. And as I got in my car, and I was kind of like, okay, it's getting dark. It's rainy. I need a place to sleep tonight. I think I'm going to go about 3 more hours. I called this hotel. And because I'd just been so blessed and gifted and in that mood of gratitude in my day, that energy carried forth even when I called the hotel. And I was friendly and I was open and I wasn't trying to get anything from anybody. I was just being me. Mm-hmm. And, we all have those moments when we're like, oh, I was me today. And it felt good. Mm. So I was being me and I was just kind to her and telling her, listen, I've had a really long drive. I'd love a nice room. I'd love, your favorite room that's available. And she ends up giving me a discount, this woman. And then I told her I'd be arriving around midnight. She's like, oh, I won't be here, but someone will be here to receive you and buzz you in. So when I finally get into this room, I open the door and there's a note from the front desk woman. Mm. She's like typed it up and printed it out with this giant smiley face, like little emoji. And it just says, I hope you have a beautiful, restful evening, Deandra. And so shout out to the Hampton in Springfield, Missouri. And she left me a vitamin water and a bag of popcorn. And it was just like the sweetest little touch.
Yeah. You showed me the picture. It was.
Yeah.
It was so sweet.
And I just realized how those miracles can roll over, you know?
Yeah.
And a beautiful life, a powerful life is one where we can bring ourselves home more and more often to live in that state of presence and slow everything down and show up with the energy that we'd like to see reflected back to us. And I think that goes a long way. And I think people take it for granted. We all get lost, but you know, wherever we are, the more that we can come home to ourselves. These are the tiny little miracles, the tiny little choices. It's the rep, right? You do these mental reps of waking mindfulness, of being present within your body, and then that weaves together to create a miraculous life.
Yeah. Wow.
So I want to close up because I've kept you this is officially the longest podcast I've ever done.
Boom.
Every word was worth it.
Oh, thank you.
And I just want to say that it's been so amazing to spend time with you and get to know you. And last night we peeped a little clip of your buddy Joe Rogan talking about you, saying some really nice things about you on his latest episode, talking about what a kind human being that you are. And this is something that I personally have gotten the opportunity to witness. You know, we were in Phoenix last week and somebody recognized you and you stopped and you talked to this man for like 15 minutes and he ended up being someone who had been a donor for Fight for the Forgotten and was just so excited, knew who you were, and you stopped, you took pictures, and I could see this man's face light up as you asked him about his experience with fighting. And this is like similar to what Joe echoes about you, is like, you know, you're the real deal. You show up with that energy that sprinkles magic into other people's lives, and you inspire me as I grow and as I learn how to navigate what it is to have a lot of incoming and messages and wanting to help everybody and still needing to manage your own energy and take care of yourself. Like, I look to you and people like you that are doing it with grace and ease and aren't forgetting about that we're all the same. And we all have dreams and hopes and pain and love. And thank you so much for teaching me about all that.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was one of the kindest things anyone's ever said to me in my entire life. And so thank you. One of the things that I learned in Sedona with you a few days in, and I think it stems from the moment of everyone coming around me, you embracing me as I cry, and 10, 12 people's hands on me, was that we are all one. And I know people say that, and I've even held that banner up, but like it didn't sink in until like I felt like the collective in that room, like all just connected, and it almost felt like our breathing was all matched, and like every inhale, every exhale, and that there was just this love that was so deep for one another. And so thank you for helping me. Thank you for sharing with me, and thank you for blessing me with that encouragement. And I feel like this is a lifelong friendship, and yeah, I'm going to be rooting you on to victory and all the things that you want and all the people you want to help, and because it's coming, it's right around the corner. And you're amazing. I'm really excited for people to go back and listen to Jenica's episode, and also for Zach's that's coming out soon. You got to be there and witness that episode with Zach Bitter, and it's going to be amazing. So,
Justin, thank you so much. How do you feel at the end of this interview? I mean, I know you've been on Joe Rogan 8 times, but like now you've made it.
No, I've made it.
Because you've been on the Thought Room.
Yeah. Well, the Thought Room and the thoughtful car confessionals. Hallie's car sweating as the AC's off.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. This is probably my favorite podcast that I've listened to, so deep and meaningful, and then that I've been on. So how fortunate and grateful am I to be able to share this space with you.
Justin, how can people donate and find Fight for the Forgotten and then connect with you? I know you're a big Instagram guy, so maybe you want to give your handle.
Yeah, the Big Pygmy. So if people want to try to do Mbuti Pygmies, it might come up, but it's the Big Pygmy. Right. And then www.fightfortheforgotten.org, all spelled out, fightfortheforgotten.org. And that's our central hub where people can find our social handles, and people can donate. They become part of the monthly giving club, which we're really encouraging. It's called the Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club is you do speak about Fight Club. If you've never seen the movie, you won't get it. But it's first rule of Fight Club is you don't speak about Fight Club on the movie, but ours is you do, that you share our mission and vision with other people, and that you give anything a month. And so $5 a month or above or anything. That way we know where we're headed and our budget every month. And it's our tribe of support. But a one-time gift, getting a t-shirt, just sharing us out on your profile or any support, the encouraging messages, any of that helps a lot. It goes a long ways. And I oftentimes screenshot those and send them to our team and even our guys in Uganda and all that stuff to let them read it in English. So
amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you once again. Super powerful.